Steve Dangle Podcast. Powered by Sports Interaction. Want to bet?
The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
And Chris Johnston is here! It's a yearly tradition.
Oh, that means the Leafs lost.
You know what? One of these days there will have won, and we'll be celebrating together. We'll all be in here hungover, and it'll be great. Yeah, the reason Chris is here is because Sports Interaction has some really great odds on the Panthers and Hurricanes, and that's how you know. Here's my question.
That's why Chris is here?
But top NHL goal scorer by the end of the playoffs, guys. Who's it going to be?
Oh,
Draisaitl?
Draisaitl, I don't know. You could bet on him.
Yeah?
But the betting
13
favorite
goals.
He leads by 5.
That's a good playoff.
The betting favorite right now is Sam Reinhart in Sports Interaction at a 275. That's at least in there. I guess the top Canadian NHL point scorer, Carter Verhaeghe, at 2.5.
Swaggy.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You think so, huh?
What's Pavelski at?
Pavelski
second in scoring.
Second.
And he missed a bunch of games.
Yeah, and he's going to have another 4-goal game.
Well, we'll see. Maybe they haven't posted those yet. Oh, you know what I'm seeing here? That's just for the series. So it's a bit of a misnomer. No, that's not true. Max Domi and Jamie Benn are in there. Yeah, where's Pavelski? Oh, I'll have to reach out.
Off the board.
Did you say it's just Canadians?
No, it's top Canadian goal scorer. Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why Pavelski's not on it.
You idiot.
Stupid head.
Dumb.
Anyway, listen, CJ, you're here, and you're here for two reasons. It was just good to be the one, but we also found out about what happened in Arizona last night with Tempe. So we will talk about Tempe in the back half of this show. But obviously, we got to start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we know you kind of had a little recap with Julian yesterday on your show, which is aptly named "Will Kyle Dubas Walk Away?" But
what do you mean?
But what you said yesterday, which was a day after the Dubas press conference, and I wanted, when we get into that, is it should be Tuesday or Wednesday, and the Leafs have to figure this out because the GM carousel is already happening and they got to get involved. It's now Wednesday. It's 11:57 a.m. Where are we at?
We're hanging.
We're
just sitting here wondering. Like, nothing that I can tell has changed. And obviously, I don't know what's going on with Kyle Dubas. I don't think, honestly, too many people do. Probably him and his wife and those that are closest to him. But the Leafs at this hour, at this moment, at this minute, are still waiting to hear what he wants to do. And based on what he said now nearly 48 hours ago, 45 hours ago, if we're going to be specific, and because we are going minute by minute on trying to figure out where the Leafs are at, it's hard to imagine how quickly can he make this decision? I think that when Monday started and the Maple Leafs were going to have their normal end of season media availability, there had been meetings already with ownership. That it's my understanding a lot of work had been done, or some work had been done on an extension for Kyle Dubas. And so at that point in time, I think everybody involved thought, okay, we'll do the end of season media avails and there'll be an answer here in the next 24 to 48 hours. What Kyle Dubas said at the podium in his time with the reporters, I think changed a lot. I mean, that was like a bomb going off. I don't think anybody behind the scenes saw that coming. I don't know if it was premeditated, if it was just the emotions got the best of him. Clearly Kyle was under some stress. I mean, I don't think that we're reading too much into his words or his body language or what we saw at the podium to say that. And I think it's changed everything. And so I don't know how this is going to be resolved. I don't know when we're going to hear from Brendan Shanahan. And I will say this, I don't know what Kyle's thinking. And really, again, he's the only one who can say for sure. But I do know a lot of people around this situation. And there's more and more thought that he might not be the GM of the Leafs moving into next season.
How surreal was it to be there? Because I can tell you, us watching it and texting was pretty surreal to watch it.
It was surreal. I mean, I didn't expect that. That day is so scripted. And this is like the old cynical journalist in me, but I kind of loathe that end of season locker cleanout, as we call it, day, because they've had 2 or 3 days typically after the end of their season. Obviously, when you're having it in mid-May or early May, your year ended before you wanted it to. But there's a lot of time, the Leafs have a lot of good PR people to work with everyone, and I'm sure go over talking points and this and that. So I find you very rarely learn much. Like, you learn who's going to go to the World Hockey Championship. Sometimes you learn who was playing injured, and some of the nature of those injuries. And then it's a lot of platitudes and cliches and this and that. And so usually you don't get emotion or you don't get surprises. That was emotion and surprise. And again, I think it was at all levels of the organization. Like, I don't believe if the powers that be knew that Kyle was going to be that honest or that those sorts of things were going to be said, I'm not sure they would have had him at the podium, quite honestly. Because I don't think that was the plan. Do you know what I mean? As I say, that day is usually so scripted. There's certain talking points, and obviously there's a lot of messaging. It's an important day for the organization. It's the first time for people in power to sit in front of the cameras, to talk to the fans, to say, okay, this year wasn't good enough, but next year will be, and this is why. And instead, we saw someone who clearly, like, this organization is at a crossroads, right? Everything is up in the air. And that underlined it with, like, in bold, highlighter, whatever, that even Kyle doesn't know if he wants to continue on or if he can continue on with what he's dealing with at home. What is the plan B? It is now May 17th. Like, in a perfect world.
Drafts in 5 weeks.
In a perfect world, you know who your GM is, and that person, and hopefully it would be Kyle Dubas. That's what the Leafs want at this point. And that he would already be starting to work behind the scenes on, the Matthews extension. Starting to talk to his colleagues about what trades might look like, because he did also kick open the door on the possibility of moving players. Getting ready, obviously, final preparations for the draft, making decisions on your restricted free agents because qualifying offers are due. Getting ready for July 1st itself. I mean, this all happens in the next 6 to 7 weeks. Like, NHL business usually stops around July 5th, more or less. I know last year, an outlier was the Tkachuk trade did happen in late July between Calgary and Florida. But for the most part, the meaningful business will be done within 2 months from now. And so to not know who your GM is not ideal. And I don't put that on anyone's feet. I've been consistent with this, so there's no hindsight involved. I really think the Leafs should have extended Kyle Dubas last summer.
You said that last summer.
I mean, I've written it. It's in the Toronto Star. It's at North Star Bets. I mean, I think it was insane the whole time. This whole thing was a charade. Like what were you going to learn this year that you didn't already know? You either believed in him or you didn't. I don't think even the fact they beat Tampa, did that make him a better GM?
Is that what prompted them to offer the extension in the first place?
Felt like it.
It seems like it. Yeah, that okay. Indications of that. But so you're going to be 5 years into a relationship with someone, and it's going to be based on how the 2 weeks go. The reason I'd keep him now, frankly, is he finally got up there and said everything's on the table.
Willing to learn.
Well, but they have to. I mean, I felt it so strongly this year, just being around the team. Like, they just assume a lot of these players assume it's just going to work out eventually. Well, you have to affect that change yourself. Like, there's just something missing there. They need a shock. Like, to me, there is no option to bring back the Big Four. Zero option. I know we don't want to go into that just yet, but the fact that Kyle Dubas finally has said that publicly, to me, that's worthy of an extension right there, because I believe in his ability as a GM. He gets a lot of business done. There's a lot of GMs that sit up there on their media days and say it's hard to make trades and it's hard to do.
He's never, I mean, I guess he said it, but it's not like it's.
But like, he hasn't lived it.
Right.
I mean, look at the Leafs team in this year's playoffs. It was basically half a roster overturned from the previous season. And just based on their contractual situations right now, it's going to be half a roster turnover again this summer. And so I think he's done a marvelous job of pivoting and trying to find new ways. And I would still trust him with the Rubik's Cube, but now we have a new dynamic. Like, is he up to the job? I think that there's a reason to question that after Monday.
The press conference changed very sharply. And it was with your question, but it also wasn't. Because you asked him, do you remember the exact question?
So he had mentioned in his opening remarks, he just kind of quickly, he said something along the lines of, and I'm obviously paraphrasing, that as for my own situation, I've got a great relationship with the owners and Brendan Shanahan. I'll talk to them later in the week. Most importantly, I'm going to speak with my wife Shannon tonight and tomorrow. We have a family decision to make, and kind of left it at that. And so that was all he kind of said initially, and it just struck me like, okay, that's new. And so I said something, Kyle, with respect, I respect that this is a family and business aspect to this, but do you still want to do the job?
Yeah.
Can I play it?
Sure.
Oh,
I think it might be helpful.
Let's see how good my memory is.
Yeah, let's test it.
there's a moment where he kind of goes rogue, is why I'm asking.
I'll just address it off the top. Had a good, long relationship here with Brendan and the owners. I'll speak to them in the coming days, but probably more importantly, speak to my wife, Shannon, and our family here tonight and tomorrow, and see where we're at as a family and how we want to proceed with everything. This has been and just in learning the past couple of days, has been a very taxing year on them. And that's obviously very important to me. So we'll go through all that and
Make our decisions.
We'll all make our decisions and roll from there.
Hey, Kyle, recognizing what you said about there being a family and business aspect to your decision with your future, I'm just wondering, though, do you still have it in you? Do you want to be here? Do you want to still run the Maple Leaf?
What I would say to that is that I think it requires me to have a full family discussion, Chris. So I can't. My family is a hugely important part of what I do. So for me to commit to anything without having a fuller understanding of what this year took on them is probably unfair for me to answer where I'm at. I wish I could give you more, but we haven't been able to have those full discussions yet. But it was a very hard year on them. And thus, it's tough for me to... What I would say is that I'm not going to... I definitely don't have it in me to go anywhere else. So it'll either be here or it'll be taking time to recalibrate, reflect on the seasons here. But you won't see me next week pop up elsewhere. I can't put them through that after this year.
You see what I mean? He started to answer your question, answered it, and then re-answered it differently. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like he went off script a little bit, and I want to know what it was like for you in that moment, because I get tunnel vision in press conferences.
Well, it was emotional. You can hear it in his voice.
Yeah.
I've seen some people commentate out there, just speculate like that this was some sort of power play or something. Like I don't see that at all. I know Kyle a little bit professionally, of course. I've dealt with him for years. We're not friends or anything like that, but like he's an authentic guy. And I see an authentic answer there. It's clear he's wrestling with this decision. And when we step back, what's hard, and I've spoken to a lot of people around the NHL since this press conference. There's a lot of people out there that believe that the Leafs can't bring him back after saying that.
Why is that?
Wow.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying I necessarily agree, but I can start to hear the point. The point that some have made to me essentially is now when we move forward, let's say they bring him back, just for argument's sake. There could be questions. Like, is he mentally, can he handle the rigors of the job? It's a damn hard job. I don't think anyone would question that. No matter what you think of his moves or anything else, I don't think anyone would say like, it's a great job. It's a cool job, but nobody works harder than him in their organization, I don't believe. Second is, if things go wrong in the future, if he comes back, will people say, well, maybe he's took his foot off the pedal a little bit. We saw how hard it was on his family. Like maybe he can't do all the things that's required of him. I just think it opens the door. And some of those are narratives, of course, but narratives matter, right? That's why they script this friggin' day. If everyone just went up and said what they thought in the microphone all the time, it would be absolute chaos.
Yeah. Who would do that?
We kind of have, you mentioned his contract situation before and how it played out last summer. And because Larry Tannenbaum went to the board and proposed that they give him an extension. We kind of know this is public information. And Rogers and Bell kind of said, no, we'll play out the year. And now this happens where they're kind of surprised by Kyle Dubas going up there and saying all this. And I wonder what their reaction to this would be. And if that leads them to not necessarily rescind whatever contract was coming, but have even more second thoughts about Kyle Dubas as general manager.
It's left them with more questions, right? I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I believe that basically what we heard in that clip you just played was new information to Kyle's bosses too. And so I think that they're left asking, like, is he up for it? You know, did this season crack him in some way? Is he just burnt out? I mean, I don't have those answers, but we've all watched Kyle speak a lot. That was out of character, right? And I think on a human level, we can be sympathetic, but on a professional, pro sports is a gruesome business. If you're not good enough anymore as a player, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, you're gone, right? If you're not performing up to your contract, you can be bought out and working in the media next day instead of playing on the ice. And
that would suck.
Awful as it is to say, if you're in Kyle's shoes, even as great a job as, and I've been a big supporter of his, I've been consistent. I think the Leafs should have extended him. I would believe in him, and I think he's ultimately going to be one of the best executives in the league if he isn't already over time, whether he has to go somewhere else to do it or not. But if you're not up to the task right now in Toronto, because this is a big friggin' task, they might have to move on without him. I don't know how that's going to play out, and this could be dated by the time you're hearing this, because I think there's a real pressure to get finality on this situation right away because there's a lot of other business to get done.
What's the deadline here?
Well, I thought it was Tuesday, and we're recording on Wednesday.
So how far down the road, like how done is this extension? Like if
there's
you're
probably always
today,
wiggle room. Like, you know.
So they've offered it to him. He has it in hand.
They've worked on an extension. I know that.
And he's reciprocated on that.
As far as I know, yes. But I mean, look, let's take his words. He's got to have a family discussion. Like, he doesn't even know if he wants to do an extension now, based on those words, based on his family. I mean, I don't know obviously I'm not privy to what's being discussed inside his house, but you know, the key part of that too, if you guys heard in his opening remark, and I missed it actually in real time, but heard it when I listened back. He said in the last few days, he's learned how taxing this season was on his family. And so, you know, what that tells me is that he's had certain conversations. I don't know if that's with his wife, Shannon, or someone else close to him, but he's had conversations basically since the season ended that maybe gave some new information or new light to his situation. And so if it is that, you know, if I'm reading him, taking him literally on those comments, you know, he's got a big decision to make, and a lot's happened here, right? I mean, he was supposed to, Game 7 would have been last night, right?
Oh man,
I don't know, man.
Thanks.
Actually, you're right.
But I'm just saying, like, you know, it's not long from, you know, fighting to try to keep the season long, doing everything you can with the team. You lose. You got to, you know, he has to meet with ownership. He's preparing for his locker meetings, and then obviously, you know, and then obviously he's having conversations with his family in which, you know, it sounds like something was brought up about whether or not he continues on, or the weight that they've had to bear and all this. So, I mean, it's fair to assume a lot's going on there, and I don't know where we go from here, but they need some resolution quickly. I do think that.
I think there are people asking this, and based on what you've told me, this seems like probably a question that we don't necessarily need to go to, but what are the chances he pulls a Paul Maurice, says, I don't know, and then some other team comes along in 6 months and makes it so comfortable for him, it's like, well, it's hard to say no to that. You know, I mean, in the sense that he is a popular guy in NHL circles and among teams that are looking for general managers. Even teams that currently have them would probably, in some cases, drop them just to get a guy like this. Pay him the $3.5-4 million that a good GM in this league would make. What are the chances that is a possibility?
Well, I think it's a huge possibility. I will say that Kyle Dubas is going to work in the NHL again, whether it's next season in Toronto or somewhere else down the road. He's young, he's experienced, he's smart, he treats people well, he's got a great reputation. But he might need some time here. I mean, it might be that simple. You know, Paul Maurice was in a different spot. Paul's on the back nine, and he thought he was retiring essentially when he stepped away in Winnipeg. And, you know, I look across time here, look in the last couple of years, like Marc Bergevin, for all intents and purposes, walked away from Montreal. He had a chance to sign an extension and didn't, because he was burnt out after 10 years there. Paul Maurice, after 8 years in Winnipeg, chose to leave the Winnipeg Jets bench. Yep. Brad Treliving has just walked away from the Calgary Flames job.
And is not allowed to talk to anybody until July 1st.
Let's not go down. I mean, that's just...
We got to talk about that at some point.
Fair enough.
Dirty business.
And we're also now seeing the possibility, at least, that Kyle Dubas is walking away. I mean, I know no one wants to hear this Canadian market stuff, but I just think that it's the crucible in the job. And we've seen now a number of senior people walk away from great jobs. And Kyle, again, I'm not presupposing the end here. Maybe he still stays. He has a lot of reasons to stay. Like, that's the funny thing. If
it is his program.
Well, and everyone who works here is basically his hire or has been there since he's been there. You know, he's clearly in the fight with his guys, right? I mean, whatever you think of him yelling at fans in Tampa or throwing a water bottle in anger, like, he's clearly in the battle and he loves his players, and he's got more of his players coming too, right? Like, we're going to get to a point next year where you're going to get Matthew Nyes in the Leafs lineup and maybe Nick Robertson and players now that have been drafted since Kyle was a general manager. Like, it's becoming more and more his team with each passing year. And as much as this was a disappointing year, the fact that you're willing to trade one of your superstars, I mean, what an opportunity for a GM.
Well, and I'm not going to go there yet.
What an opportunity, though, like, to reshape things this program still has lots of legs in it. It obviously needs a pivot, and that pivot comes with uncertainty, and it's a bit of a risk or whatever you want to call it. But like, this is what you dream of in a way. Like, you're trying to find an answer. I mean, it's a tortured reference that we've all made, but like, you're Masai Ujiri trading for Kawhi Leonard. That's what you hope for. Like, you're making a massive franchise-altering decision, but it could be the key that unlocks the door and changes everything.
Steve?
Does Kyle Dubas extending increase the chances of Sheldon Keefe staying or decrease it? I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure it's as certain as it was.
If he leaves, I feel like the chances of Sheldon Keefe staying are like 5%.
Okay.
That's not, I just think the easiest thing to do if you're a new GM is to come in and be like, okay, this guy's had 4 playoff runs and won 1 series, and, let's have a fresh voice. I think if Kyle Dubas stays, he gave some examples at his press conference of things he liked from the coaching staff, even though the team didn't get the results. I feel like there's definitely a higher than 5% chance that Keefe is retained if Dubas stays. But, too bad for Sheldon Keefe in a lot of ways. But my analysis of this isn't even necessarily that he is actually the problem, but I just think he's one of the easiest solutions available to them. He's got 1 year left on his contract. So, typically we've seen some head coaches, including Lindy Ruff, who coached into the second round in New Jersey, play out the final year of their deal. But generally, you'd be talking about extending him this summer or changing the coach. And so, it's hard to know where we're going to go until we know who's making that decision. But I think even if Dubas stays, he did leave open the door to making a change there.
Same question, but for Brendan Shanahan. If Dubas stays, is Brendan likely to stay? If Dubas goes, does Brendan go?
I don't have the same feel there, Jesse. I would say, again, it's May 17th. Like, does this board have a plan? Did they have a plan B for Shanahan? Like, I don't see who are you hiring if you get rid of Brendan Shanahan.
Well, and the story is that when they needed to get somebody to be the president, it was either Larry or Tim Leiweke called Gary Bettman and said, who would you hire? And Gary said Brendan Shanahan. And that's how they have Brendan Shanahan today. That's the story.
To be fair, that's how a lot of business gets done in the NHL.
Which is why you sign up for NHL player safety. I'm telling you, George Peros is going to be a GM in this league.
Although, to be fair, there's not a huge history of... There's a lot of people that work at player safety that I know that are maybe more junior roles that have wanted to make the jump and haven't been able to. Like,
really?
It's not necessarily the pipeline... I mean, look, it's hard to get these jobs. There's not many of these jobs.
Right.
We actually happen to have a few GM openings right now, but typically there's not a lot of GM turnover.
Well, look at Canada. I mean, we didn't have a GM change for more than almost a decade, like in any market.
And now it's in style.
Yeah. Now it's all in. I want to ask you about
questions about Ottawa. Too.
Well, I'm glad you talked about Shanny there, Jesse, because the one thing I'll say about Shanny this year is he's been the least public Shanny we've ever seen, and you don't see him in the press box with Dubas a lot. Or sorry, the press box, the box, whatever they put him in. You don't see him in front of the camera. Obviously, he doesn't do a ton of interviews throughout the season anyway.
I don't think he's done one since last year's end of season.
Right. And so as the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, at this point, we, in all honesty, we should have heard from him at Locker Cleanup. We should have heard from him on Monday. The fact that it's now Wednesday and we haven't, whether or not it's reasonable to read into this, I still am going to, because there have been a lot of rumors about Shanny and Dubas not getting along. And I don't think that's not why they're in the box together. But it does feel a little bit like Shanny has let Dubas, if this goes down, he's going to be the face. And I just wonder what your thoughts on that might be. I know he was there. I know he was in Tampa. I know he was in Florida. I
don't know if he was in Tampa.
Okay, so he was in Florida though.
Yes, I'm not saying he wasn't in Tampa.
You
but
just don't know.
I never saw him there.
So you're not seeing him either, and you're there.
Yeah, and you know, they won their first playoff series as an organization in 19 years in Tampa. Like there's a hallway outside the visiting room there where like Larry Tannenbaum was. Same hallway where I saw Scotty Barnes after one of the games earlier in the series. But like, you know, obviously that's a big moment for the organization. It's a moment you'd expect. I'm not saying that Brendan would be front and center in the dressing room hugging all the players necessarily, but you would normally expect after, you know, he's 9 years into trying to do this here. I would have thought he'd be there. And again, he might have been there and he just might have somehow escaped my vision.
Okay. Is there something to be read into there?
Yeah, because I don't think there's very many accidents with Brendan, honestly. I think that he's very aware of, you know, like messaging, self-image. I think he's very good at managing his bosses, which is his primary role, right? His primary role, I believe, is to sort of be an insulation between the board and the hockey department. And so we would never see a lot of his work because we're not very privy to what goes on at the board level of this organization. Although it's funny, it's starting to now be a story again after 15, 20 years not hearing about the board of MLSE too much. All of a sudden they seem to be factoring into things a little more. I don't think it's an accident though. I don't know what's all there. I think that some of the not getting along stuff is a little overblown.
Okay. They're not as tight as they used to be though. They used to be.
Right. Well, there's tension, right? I mean, there's tension on everybody in the organization. Like they haven't got it done. And it's fair to say any two people that work together, I'm sure even you three, as you're building your business here, there are times where you're not all in lockstep agreement on the path forward or on a certain decision. Like I think that same dynamic exists for a president and a GM or a GM and a head coach. But you know, a lot changed this year. Like they used to watch in a box on the 100 level. Mm-hmm. So like one of the main boxes, and you know, you'd see Brendan Shanahan often in there. You'd see Lawrence Gilman.
Yep.
Who was part of the front office, obviously Brandon Pridham, who's essentially Kyle
Lou
Dubas'
used to be in there too.
Right-hand man. And then, you know, COVID hits and everything goes to crap. And I don't know where they watch from because they had a whole building for like 2 years. Don't get me started. And, you know, but this year they came back and Kyle was watching in the old suite that Brian Burke used to watch from. And it's up high. It's up in the press box level. And then now he would have, you know, Jason Spezza, who's come on to work with him, and Brandon Pridham there primarily. And all of a sudden, Lawrence Gilman got a new title and was kind of whisked away where you can't see him. And Brendan Shanahan, as far as I know, was never in that box on a Leafs game night at home. So I know.
So you're saying if Dubas signs this extension, they would be able to work together. That relationship is tenable for now.
As far as I understand it, yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's at a point where to be fair, like I was at practice a whole bunch these last few weeks. Like more than once, they were standing together for an hour-long practice, talking, watching what's going on. Like, it's not like these guys don't speak. But there's, you know, I don't think either of them could deny that there's tension and uncertainty. And, you know, I'm sure I don't think it's all kumbaya, but I think it rarely is in pro sports. Like that might be something that we don't understand. It's a different work environment than other places. Like, I think that there's a lot of FU matches in a lot of front offices over big decisions and at key moments and under pressure and stress and all those sorts of things. So I don't know how unusual it is, but yeah, you're right. There was a clear change. Like, we can't deny that.
Oh, year to year. It was, and the thing is that,
and as I said, go back to my original point, I don't think that's an accident. Like, I think that there's a conscious decision there.
I can tell what year Kyle Dubas memes are from based on whether Shanny's in the background or not. Like, when you see like Kyle Dubas gifs of him, because he's very animated in the box, right? And Shanny's not. But you can tell what year they're from because you see Shanahan kind of looming in the background a little bit like the Grim Reaper because he's very, very, you know, quiet and he's tall or whatever. And there's Dubas freaking out about whatever play. I do think, and I that's not a slight against Shanahan, by the way. I do think, though, that I wonder where his position is with the board. Because as people who, I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, as people who work for other people, we tend to look at things up. Okay, we tend to look up at our manager's manager, and say the board, right? You're the head. If you're Sheldon Keefe, you got Dubas, you got Shanny, and then you got the board on top of you. We never really look at things down. We don't look at things from the board level. How much do you know about the board level and how they view this and what the operations were this weekend? Because I've heard everything from there was nothing to it was chaos.
Well, it sounds like this year there was definite dissension in the board more than in the past, and that Rogers specifically, their representation on the board was not on board with Kyle initially staying on. So I think that is a dynamic that's been there.
So has Bell changed their position then?
I'm not sure. And obviously I work at TSN.
Oh yeah.
But I'm just
listen,
telling
I work at Virgin Radio, but I
mean, I don't know. Like even though I work there, which is, probably 28 rungs down from the level of what we're talking about, but I don't have any insight from that. But I just want to put my affiliations on the table for anyone who may not be aware.
I work at the zoo.
How's that?
The city of Toronto?
The animals are pretty chill.
City of Toronto, yeah.
Metro
So
Toronto.
you're a government worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Civil servant?
Unionized.
Wow, are you on the sunshine list?
It was awesome.
I've never been to the zoo.
CJ, we got to go to the zoo,
I
man.
have to bring you. I'll give you the tour myself.
I love that. I've actually never been to Toronto Zoo.
Oh my God.
We've been planning this for years.
We gotta do it.
We want a Steve Dangle zoo tour where you lead a zoo tour like on the old bus that you used to do.
Can we bring fans
We
and stuff?
bring in
Yes,
fans.
yes.
That's what we want to do. Yeah.
Make it happen.
We want to sell
Absolutely.
out the zoo.
That's where honestly, it's where
Can
I
that
take my
event be
kid now.
licensed?
I hope so.
The zoo is licensed. Don't you?
Hey,
Yeah. That's where I take my kid when I want to just wear her out. If they're going to burn the batteries, take the kids to the zoo. And you only need to go to a couple exhibits. That's it.
Water park's free.
Oh, see?
Water park. If you get the membership, you just show up at the water park, go home without spending a dime.
CJ, everybody wants to know about this part, which is why I saved it for last. What?
You want
Go
any
ahead.
more zoo facts there, Matty? Can I help you with that there?
Steve's best-selling book if you want more zoo facts.
Yeah, it's basically Steve Dangle, the zoo employee.
This zoo is ruining my life.
Thank you for mentioning it was a bestseller. Stop acting like that chapter was a bad idea.
Chapters.
It was a chapter.
It was the entire
It was an
first
epoch.
half of the book.
It's called Zoo Story. It's one chapter.
All right, now
This place is a zoo.
always, forever. CJ, you know that everybody wants to know about this quote, and it's why I saved it for last. I wanted to get the board conversation and the coach conversation, the GM conversation. Kyle Dubas said, if he stays, and let's assume in this scenario he is, that nothing is off the table in terms of moves the Leafs could make this summer. And he also followed that up with a comment about what it takes to win, not just in the conference, but in the division. He said that the Western Conference is a little more free flow.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure that's always the case, but that was this year.
He also added on that he hasn't done extensive work on that, but it's his impression watching from afar.
Right.
Something along those lines.
And the fact that it will take a specific type of team, you got to get them into the playoffs, but to win in the playoffs in the East, even to get out of the Atlantic Division, which the Leafs have not done ever under Kyle Dubas. How do you begin, if you're the Leafs, to approach that? Like I've heard, if we're talking about the core four here, and I don't want to necessarily hit that yet. How do you
keep that tasty steak?
Yeah, I'm going to
cooking
keep
in the
you away.
background.
How do you approach telling teams we're open for business? Because we've heard stories, and we talked about this years ago, where one team sent out like a fax to all the 30 NHL teams at the time and said, "This player's available. Make an offer."
Email, I think, and I'm
Was
just
it-
like, "What do you do all day?"
Yeah, like it's just putting it out there. So how would they approach this? And I know that they're not doing that yet.
Well, two things. There's like a list that circulate emails to like GMs and assistant GMs with that kind of info. But then too much of the info is getting out. So they created a WhatsApp chat that only has like the 32 GMs on it.
No.
So there is a WhatsApp chat.
No way.
What is it called?
I can't say, but I have seen it. Like I've seen what goes in there, and I've actually seen, like literally the minute you're out as a GM, they just boot you from the chat. Like it's like, sorry, but you're out now.
Now, is Tree Living still allowed to be in there? Can
No.
he still under contract?
No way.
Okay.
Adam, what's the story about the F1 chat and Nikita Mazepin?
Oh, I don't know that one. Do you know that one?
Oh, he was kicked out like immediately the day the season ended.
There's a driver chat?
Yeah, there's a full driver. It seems like it's pretty common across pro sports. Across pro sports is there's these WhatsApp chats where all the guys just chat and.
It's funny because I have like a CJ show chat.
Yeah,
in my WhatsApp, and I know, but then there's also like it's no different. It's just it's a different level of business you're doing. But the NHL GM chat, and so I mean they have that as a way to get the word out. But also, let's face it, there's no reason for Kyle to enter that chat. Mm-hmm. He just told the entire league. Nothing is off the table. This is the first time the Leafs have publicly invited you to phone them and say, what would it take to get Austin Matthews? Or we would love to get Austin Matthews. This is the sort of thing we could do. Mitch Marner, we've always loved him. This is like that's already happened. Now, I don't know because we don't know if Kyle Dubas is still the GM, if he's been flooded with calls, if he's taking those calls. But the Leafs have just said something they've never been willing to do. They've publicly said they're at least willing to think about it.
So,
and I don't think so. Here, just quickly.
Okay.
I've had a lot of people say to me the trade for them was they should have done Marner for Tkachuk last summer.
Was that on the table? I thought Tkachuk didn't want to be in Canada.
I don't think you want to be in Canada, but this is why I don't even want to explore it because the Leafs at that time were never thinking about trading Mitch.
They
Marner.
were never going to do that.
They weren't taking calls on Mitch Marner. They weren't exploring that with anything. Like they were going forward. So like it's I guess in hindsight, yeah, we should have traded this guy for that guy, but that was never a conversation. Now they're going to have those conversations. Now, I'm not saying Marner for Tkachuk, but there's...
Why not?
Well,
does Florida like him?
I don't know. It seems to me Florida has built the team around guys like Bennett and Tkachuk and Radko Gudas, and they like the butchers.
Yep.
They do.
As they call Gudas down there in Florida. So, I'm not saying they don't have room for skill, but I just think that they... Yeah. So, but now they're going to have those conversations. So this is fascinating.
One more question before we talk about the names. They don't have a lot of time to work whatever deals out they're going to work out. Because again, draft is in 5 weeks, free agency in 6 weeks.
CJ's off in 6 weeks and 1 day.
That's right. If a deal...
Sorry, that wasn't on your calendar.
If a deal does get done with the core four involved, and let's not mention any names yet because I have a question for that too, and I'm going to ask Jesse and Steve the same. Will it get done by the draft, free agency? What do you suspect?
Well, I think it's before free agency. It's all the same, right? The draft is the 28th and 29th of June, and free agency is July 1st.
I suppose is that like, would they want to go hunting with a ton of cap space in free agency, even though the crop's kind of thin this year? Or do they, like that's sort of what I'm, because they'll have 14 million, but they got a whole bunch of free agents.
The bigger issue is if you're trading a $10 or $11 million player, or even an $8 million player, $7 million player, it's hard to do it after July 1st to other teams because the other teams have made free agent decisions. So there's all kinds of reasons that say that June 30th is essentially the deadline for any of these deals. For one, of course, Matthews and Marner pick up full new move clauses. William Nylander gets a modified no trade clause as of July 1st. It's just easier to trade any of those players before that happens. You don't have to deal with their agents, although we can get into it, but there's reasons maybe you might have to a little bit. But in theory, you can just trade them to anybody before that date. And I do think by the time you get to July 1st and other teams start spending money, even if you put a superstar in the market, those trades become harder to make. I mean, the window is now. The window is 6 weeks, from right now to think about that, to explore those deals. As I mentioned, the Tkachuk one did happen in late June, or July. So it's not impossible after July 1st, but I think it's way more likely to happen at the draft or the day after, which is June 30th, but before July 1st comes.
Okay. So, now I want to ask names, but do you want to do a sneak one in there before that?
Well, I wanted to ask
I'm scared because you have Cat Friendly up.
Well, I wanted to ask about the possibility of after July 1st because Mitch has a 7.25 signing bonus. Matthews has a $7 million signing bonus. 7.2, and Nylander has a 3.5. Is there any appetite in giving that unbelievable sum of money and then trading a player because there's added value there?
Well, that's always been the secondary part of putting those signing bonuses in the contract. The first being the players like getting all their money up front.
Of course.
But the second has been, and we've seen it even going back to like the Matt Martin days and other trades the Leafs have made. Andreas Johnston, I believe, was another one where they've paid a signing bonus on July 1st and then that player's actual money is just way less. I mean,
almost all of them.
You would have it in front of you. I think after Matthews is getting paid, like he's paid like $800,000 after that signing bonus.
Even less actually,
725,
$750, and then next year 7.2 up front, $775 after.
But I'm just saying after July 1st, he only has that $775 remaining.
Exactly.
Now, if you're trading Austin Matthews, dramatic pause. You need to work with him and his agent, because any team that's giving up whatever it would take to get him needs to know he wants to play there and will sign there.
Yep.
So for him, even though that no trade clause, no movement clause doesn't kick into July 1st, I feel like if you're trading him, you have to first go to him and get a list of the teams he'd be willing to negotiate an extension with, because otherwise it's not a great trade. If you're trading Mitch Marner, you really can't do that, because Marner can't sign an extension anyway till July 1st, 2024. Right. Now, you might want to be kind to him. My phone's blowing up. I'm nervous. You might want to be kind to him.
Let me check on it for you. Yeah.
And trade him somewhere he wants to go because you like Mitch. And, there might still be ways to do that, but you don't need to get the player's consent to the same degree. But even with Marner, as you point out here, a lot of the money has been paid up front in his contract. So even though he carries that pretty high cap hit, a little south of $11 million, the actual dollars owed, you can do the math for me, but it's way less.
It's a lot less.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty, you're trading a Selke Trophy finalist who is perennially at 98 points, it seems like just shy of 100. And, with the skill he does, kills penalties, still in the prime of his career, under contract for 2 more years, and the money is low relative to what the cap hit is. Man, to me, Marner is the most valuable thing you could trade in a way. I think Austin Matthews, of course, at this point is a more accomplished player by just a few degrees, but, Hart Trophy winner and all that. But if you're trading Matthews, you have to trade him to one of 3 or 4 places where he wants to play, and that team's signing him to like a $14 million extension.
And those teams are.
Hold on. You know what I find frustrating?
Hosting a show with me.
No, I love hosting a show with both of you. I've loved it the entire time.
That?
I love you guys. No, I love you guys. No, I love that. You know what I find frustrating, though, is when I'm sitting on the dock on a long weekend and I have to get up to get another beer. And I look at my can and I go, why can't you be bigger?
That's not how that works.
I can't. You need to be bigger in Muskoka Brewery.
You know what they call that phenomenon? Dock block.
Exactly. Thank you.
Adam, stop
solve
lying.
That problem for me.
Stop lying.
Why am I lying? How am I lying?
You call your butler to get you a new tread light.
Fair enough.
You don't have to get up from your dock. You say, Jeeves, get me a tread light.
Here's the problem with Jeeves is that he charges by the beer. So every time he has to go get one, that costs me at least $20.
I think that's not how butlers work.
I don't know.
But not that I would know.
Listen,
You would know.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should listen to you, butler man.
Mine is like a pay-as-you-go butler, okay? So anyway, long story short, tread lightly from Muskoka Brewery. It's locally brewed. It's not owned by a gigantic conglomerate. It's actually done by 200 people that live in Muskoka.
A conglomerate like Adam Wild Business.
That's right. It's also it's available at the LCBO, the beer store, grocery stores. Great light beer to unwind with after your day at work, or on your dock or your balcony during the long weekend, which we love.
Or your yacht.
Or your yacht. It would be great on a yacht. Did you see Bezos on his yacht?
Oh my God, can you guys wrap this so I can drink
sorry.
this?
All right, Muskoka Brewery. Hey, and they've also got the extra large can, which is what my whole point was in the beginning. The can is, are you ready? 568 milliliters. Grab it this long weekend. And remember, Muskoka Brewery is independently owned and operated in the heart of Muskoka, employing a team of over 120 people, a true Canadian crafted beer. And you can visit the tap room in Bracebridge off of Highway 11 at 118. Fresh beer on tap to go, and tours available with live music on weekends throughout the summer. Hey, how's that playoff beer?
It's gone. You shaved it off of my face.
What'd you use to shave it?
Manscaped.
That's right. And boy, look at how great the stubble is coming back in, but it's coming in so evenly. Even you, Jesse.
Yeah. No, I use the beard trimmer that they got. I love the little dial where you flick it, and it changes the amount you're cutting off. It's perfect.
I feel like a 4 today. Maybe 0.5. I got a meeting.
That is guys. That is called the Weed Whacker 2.0. It's got better shape and a better motor than anybody else, and it's really, really good for things like not just that, but there's also the ear. You've got your ear and nose trimmer as well. The beard preserver, all a part of the performance package that you can get with Manscaped. So,
Adam, I'm talking about the beard hedger. That's the beard one.
Oh, that's the beard one.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're talking about the weed whackers like you do the other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when you said the weed whacker, I'm like, I don't think it is.
Okay. No. Well, listen, the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. This kit has balm, shampoo, conditioner, and oils you need to keep presentable. or not presentable in Steve's case. And the trimmer you need when it's finally time to cut. Bummer. Get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code
Dangle.
That's right. At manscaped.com, it's 20% off free shipping. Promo code DANGLE, DANGLE. Manscaped.com. Pick a winner, hit the playoff push, and use Manscaped to shave that bush. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question, and we're going to go down the table. I'm going to start with Jesse. I'm going to go to Steve. I'm going to give you my opinion. Don't take too long with anybody. And then we're going to get CJ's expert opinion.
I wonder who Adam posed that to.
Rank in order of most likely to get moved. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Start at least likely, go to most likely. So the least likely to get moved of the core four in order to the most likely.
Should we start with the two dummies and then?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
And you outlined that. And you don't want any reasons, you just want the numbers.
Just give me the numbers.
And we're going least likely.
Least likely?
So one is John Tavares.
As most likely or least?
Least likely.
Steve, we're going to go least to most. And we're going to
follow
start
along.
with you and Jesse. And
Follow
then we're going to
along.
go to me. And then we're going to ask the expert.
So are you starting with least?
Morgan Riley. No,
One.
not Morgan Riley. Core four.
One is John Tavares. Two is William Nylander. Three is Austin Matthews. Four is Mitch Marner.
Steve, your opinion.
That Jesse is stupid. Tavares, least likely. Matthews, second least likely. Nylander, I should make most likely just to piss off Jesse, but I'm going to say second most likely. And Marner, most likely.
And I'm going to say the exact same as you, Steve. So, CJ, give us your rank. Least likely to get moved to most likely to get moved.
Sadly, I agree with you too. And I'd like to take a different opinion, but I think it goes Tavares least likely. Of course, they can't move him without his consent.
And he won't consent. We know that. He said that.
He won't. And I don't think they're going to strong arm him any more than, sometimes teams make it uncomfortable, but I think he's here. Matthews next in terms of least likely, then Nylander, and I think Marner of the core four is the most likely to be traded.
Do you think any of the core four are open to it? Outside of Tavares, which we already know the answer to.
It depends how you interpret open to it. I think they're frustrated too. And
Are they losing belief?
I don't know if they're losing belief, but they might be losing patience with the whole thing. I mean, I go back to Mitch Marner's quote before Game 4 of the series of Florida, where kind of unprompted he just mentioned tuning out the noise. Like, it still feels like he's blaming the media or the fans. I think it's hard for him to play here. It's not going out on a limb. 7 years, lives here / Muskoka year round, can't ever escape this. I don't think he wants to be traded. That's certainly not what I'm saying. Please don't radio me. But, if a trade came about, it might be time. It might be time.
Steve, you outlined all the contract situation with Mitch and Austin after July 1st. And I look at Mitch's contract situation and I say, why wouldn't they? He doesn't have any right for a trade until July 1st. So I don't think if they're going to move Mitch, I don't think you get to the point where the no movement clause kicks in.
Oh, you're right.
And
You're right.
he has to make that decision. No, if you're going to trade Mitch Marner, it has to happen on June 30th or earlier, because then who cares what he thinks? He has no contractual right in this situation. The Leafs can move him to anywhere. That's why I think there's along with the points that CJ is making about it looks like he's the odd man out.
Do you think that the Leafs could sell not moving one of the core four this summer to the fan base going into October?
No. I mean, maybe they might try.
They might have to.
No.
No? I mean, this is an organization who for sure has shown their willingness to make trades. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly was a Toronto Maple Leaf. But
Very briefly.
Very, very briefly.
Made it very clear that was not going to be extended.
So he's not coming back.
No way.
Why do you think that is? Is it just the organization, the market? What, or is it all of it?
I think he loved, we saw the stuff with his grandma and his parents. And I think he loved the opportunity. I don't think he appreciated everything about being here. And look, there's been rumors since that trade happened that he's going back to St. Louis. I'm not saying that's happening, but I'm not saying it's anything Toronto did wrong. I just think he always approached this kind of as the end of the season, chance to win a cup, chance to play on another team. And then, he's also, I think he's he's not giving out discounts on the next contract.
Right. He can still make some serious money.
As he, it's his right.
So then,
But to me, reading between the lines, like he didn't even. Usually, guys kind of say, "Well, I'd love to stay here, but we'll have to see how it works out." He didn't even go that far. So I just think he knows he's going to July 1st.
So then, obviously we've got an Austin Matthews extension that can be signed July 1st. We also have a William Nylander extension that can be signed July 1st. People forget that. Talk about Austin all the time, but Williams got the best value contract on the team.
Which instantly changes if he takes more.
Right. And CJ, you said yesterday on your show that of the potential players of those three guys that they could trade, Matthews, Marner, Nylander probably nets you the least because he's only got a year left. And he's
another notch below.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal talent, but he's not
older.
He's not. Yeah, and he's older too, older than those guys of the three. Obviously, Austin probably gets you the most. I think that's a pretty easy one to say. For Leaf fans and setting expectations, if Marner is the guy that goes, and I'm saying if, I at no point have said you need to trade Mitch Marner, you should trade Mitch Marner, so I don't get radioed here, but if Marner goes, are we talking about an equivalency package coming back? And what I mean by that is a player who's perhaps younger and earlier on in their development curve. Are we talking about multiple players? Are we talking about prospects and picks? Are we talking about everybody's freaking out about, well, what if it's 75 cents on the dollar? Forgetting the other side, which what if it's not? What does this look like? What would the organization even be looking for? What are they adding to this core?
You need another star back, I think.
And what kind of a star?
So, would it be more likely to look like the Kachuk-Huberdeau deal or the Eichel-Tuck deal?
Well, you'd rather Eichel Tuck,
Of course.
which also included other players and picks and things.
Yeah.
But I don't think the picks and things and this prospect that maybe kind of sort of could be something is what is valuable. It's the prime piece back has to be something that you're really comfortable in. And there's ways, look, it might be someone who objectively is a little worse than Mitch Marner. Maybe he's a little younger. Maybe he's a little cheaper. Maybe he just does something different that you feel is missing in the organization, but is also still at a star quality. If they don't get at least a star back, I don't even think you can think about it. This is the beauty, though. I don't think they've ever had these conversations until maybe now. It's like they haven't really, and as far as I know, canvassed the league to see what someone would pay for Mitch Marner. And when Kachuk went on the market last year, I don't think a lot of people thought the day that was happening he was going to end up in Florida. I never heard Huberdeau's name or Weegar's name until it happened. Friday night in July. I was in Europe. I woke up in the morning. I was like, whoa.
I'm sure you were thrilled about that.
Well, I mean, I was mentally not that worried about it, but I was like, holy shit, that's a big trade. I mean, look, you can only do so much. Sometimes you have to go to bed or go on vacation or do something.
Well, Adam and I have told this story before, but we were baked the night Ryan O'Reilly got traded to the Leafs.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, there's nothing we can do about that.
Except enjoy it. We enjoyed it.
Text a few people, go, yeah, it'll be up in the morning.
I'm sure I told you this way back, but that crazy day, the June 29th with Stamkos signing and the Subban trade, I was taking a nap. Like I literally missed the whole thing.
And Hall. Yeah.
It was.
I remember I was in
the
London.
afternoon. Like I literally woke up and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like I was negligent in my role as someone who's supposed to try to be getting this news.
It all happened in, I think, 30 minutes.
Oh yeah. And literally, I'm not kidding. I was napping the whole time. Like I had no idea.
Incredible.
And I don't even nap a lot. I just think I was burnt out at the end of the playoffs. It's a long road.
Adam and I were burnt out too.
Get this. So Marner is owed $16 million and a little bit more in actual dollars, even if you pay the signing bonus for the next 2 years. So he's an $8 million player per year by actual salary, which is valuable. I mean, obviously, lots of teams have cap space concerns, but there are some that are worried about the actual dollars that get transferred to his bank account.
Of course.
Every, twice a month. So I think he would be a pretty valuable piece, but I mean, who's to know? People love Mitch Marner, as they should.
Yeah.
He does everything. He plays among the most minutes in the league at his position.
Selke nominee.
Puts
Was
up-
their MVP this year?
Puts up massive points. And I think if you're looking at his situation from afar, you're probably going like, let's get that guy out of Toronto and let him play.
Yeah.
Because like it's pretty clear. I think we've all observed, like if he can just be free and easy, if he can just be living his life and not be in his head too much,
He's amazing.
Easier said than done. Like there's not the number of people better than him is pretty small. Yeah. And so I think he stands to gain the most, quite honestly, if the Leafs dealt him. I think it could just change his life. And this place is a nut house. It's a friggin' nut house. And we love it. And we live here. Mm-hmm. And we're part of the nuttiness.
Oh, I'm thrilled about it.
It's the middle of May and we're just here.
Join the party.
We could just keep the cameras rolling for 4 hours. We could just keep talking about everything. And someone out there would listen. Like, that's the amazing thing. Like, this is what I love about being around a team where people care. But like, it's a lot if you're playing here and if your family lives here and all that stuff. So
by all indications, though, it doesn't seem like he believes that if he left, everything would be better. And like, you think about things like the All-Star game coming up in Toronto and how much he probably wants to be a part of that and be on the team and represent the city and the organization in his hometown. And I just don't think he believes like if I move to a different team, it'd be better for me. But from the outside looking in, I think we would all make that decision for him.
Right. Well, if you're in it, you can't think that way, right?
Yeah.
The minute you like play for a team or work for a company and you start thinking, oh, I'd be better at that company. Like, I just think once your mind goes somewhere else, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. So I get, like, he's all in on being a Maple Leaf. As he said, even he reiterated recently, like, this has been his whole lifelong dream. Like, I get that it would probably be crushing, but it doesn't, sometimes, as we all know in our life, like, sometimes what you don't want is the best thing for you. Mm-hmm. And so that there's a possibility that it's funny you bring up the All-Star game. So I was just in that arena called now FLA Live Arena, that arena in just the middle of nowhere, kind of near the Sawgrass Mall in Florida.
Kodak Black's place.
Yes, the house that Kodak built. And but I was in the press conference room, and I had a flashback because I was there, obviously, and the Leafs are going down 0-3. And I was like, last time I was in here, it was like Shanahan and Marner up on a stage announcing the Toronto All-Star game. And I'm like, it's just so, anyway, so weird. I don't know why my brain's going there. But.
What in your estimation does this team not have? Why isn't this worked? What do they need to do? Whoever they move, and I don't want to. Here's the thing, because inevitably, what happens when things get out is in comment sections on Twitter, all that sort of thing. This stuff comes out, and it becomes like a dog pile on a certain player. So the reason I don't want that to happen on Mitch Marner, I don't want that to happen Matthews, Nylander, any of these guys. But if you're the Leafs, and if Dubas's extension is signed, and remember in this alternate reality, he has signed the extension already. What do you believe they don't have?
Oh, man. I don't know what they think. I'll just speak from what I think. They don't score enough. 2 goals in the last 7 playoff games.
Isn't that nuts?
How is that possible?
Well, it's a thing, and it's been a thing, as you well know, that when it matters the most, they don't score enough.
Because you just ISO the big guys.
And you know whose fault that is? The fans, obviously.
And the media.
Yeah, exactly. This is what that shit pisses me off. It's like, oh, it's hard to play here. Well, I mean, imagine playing another sport where people care.
Imagine playing European, like soccer over in Europe.
Yeah, like just tell me you're a baby without telling me you're a baby.
Being LeBron James,
right? So they don't score enough when it matters, and this is where I think I've got to where they have to change. So, and Kyle kind of references Kyle Dubas in his press conference. I think that they believed all they had to do was put the blinders on and just focus. Like any negative feedback, any negative thing that came along in terms of a result, like losing in a playoff series, they believed they just had to push forward and eventually it was going to work. And we've reached the point where that you can no longer say that. Like, and I think that unfortunately, a sort of a fallout from that mindset is that these players just believed, okay, just keep doing what I'm doing and eventually it's going to work. But they keep doing the same things and it's producing the same result. And they don't even recognize, like, I didn't hear one guy just say I needed to be better or whatever.
That's an interesting thing. Not a single person said we need to be better or I need to be better next year.
I don't believe that they believe that.
That's
I think that they
terrifying, Chris.
I think that they believe if we just keep doing it, eventually one year it's going to work.
Well, okay. LeBron James would tell you after every season, whether he's won or not, that he needs to be better.
They're going to luck their way to a championship?
I don't mean luck. I think that they think that, okay, so...
That's what they think.
But they think that, you know, to be fair, Austin Matthews had the most shots, the most scoring chances, everything in that Florida series, but he didn't score. And John Tavares didn't score. And I think that and Tavares had what? He had a breakaway for sure.
Couple. Close ones, yeah.
He had chances.
really good chances.
Austin rang a shot off the crossbar at the start of game 3 and a bunch of other chances, a chance in overtime in game 5 at the side of the net and all kinds of other stuff in the middle. I think that they just believe in next year, they won't be snake bit in that situation. But here's the thing. At a certain point, they need different types of players. They need a different mix. And I think what they need more than anything, they need to be a little less comfortable in that dressing room. What's great about Kyle Dubas, honestly, it's all true, is he did create a situation where like everyone is valued, where I think he's really created a modern workplace for pro sports, and I think pro sports need to get there. But maybe it just got a little too comfortable for some of those guys.
And comfortable how? Can make that a little bit more tangible for people that have never been in a dressing room.
Well, they're challenged by the coaching staff for sure. Like we've seen that. Like, remember the problem was even early in the year, is a game after Arizona, and Keefe called out his big players, and then the next day he walked it back
because the big players had their feelings hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but he's definitely pushed Nylander in particular of those big players. Like I've heard him give critical commentary in the media and push him and see it at practice and things like that. But I just
never walks it back with him.
I just think that they've never felt in danger of being traded. They've never felt that like the results of this game could change everything for whatever reason. Like it just feels, like Marner's answer after game 5. It's like, he's like, they think something's going to change. He's like, well, we all have years on our contract. Like that's how he thinks.
It'll change when we want it to, essentially.
Right. But I think that management now has to proactively go in and drop a little bomb in there and make it less comfortable, introduce a new dynamic, trade one of the star quality players for another star quality player who everyone's not sure about. You got to incorporate this person now into the mix, and everyone's just a little less comfortable in a good way. Comfort is things need to be hard usually when you get to your best spot in life, right? Like it can't, if it was comfortable, it'd be boring and easy, right? I find that you get the most out of yourself when you're a little bit uncomfortable. And so I just think it's gotten a little too comfortable there for the players. And I think a lot of that is good. Like they've tried to protect them from the weight of the market. They've tried to protect them from the pressure. I think they need to get more guys in the dressing room that just want to chew through leather to win. And I'm not saying these guys don't care. I just don't know if they know. They just don't have enough. They got to change that mix. You can graft all the Luke Schens and Nola Charis and Ryan O'Reillys, like who all, I think, in various ways played great or well.
Mm-hmm. And they've done that for a few years. Thornton, Foligno, who else can we name? Wayne Simmons.
But the whole thing is built on the guys making half of the salary cap at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yes. Ultimately, like they have changed the other 40 million, give or take, constantly. And some of it's been better than others, but they've constantly changed the other 40 million. But the 40 million at the center is designed that those guys will win you series. And
they're never all hot at once.
How about one of them being hot when it matters?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see, they played pretty well in game 4 and 5. Sheldon Keefe said they lost in the first 3 games. Mm-hmm. None of them were hot in games 1, 2, or 3.
Exactly. So based on Keefe's words, we should not care about how games 4 and 5 went.
Right.
If that's when it was lost, then what was the point of the rest of it?
Well, I mean,
I think he was talking in sort of hindsight, like, man, if we had just won one of those fucking games where they were ahead in 2 of them.
If only we hadn't put ourselves in a position where only 4 teams in the over 100-year history of the NHL have come back from. Yeah, no shit.
Right. By the way,
here's
Keefe
the
was
thing.
the first one to praise Nylander after the season, by the way. I just want to
because he was great.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They win game 2, in which they were up 2-0, a game they kind of have to win.
Yep.
It allows you to go and have a crappy game 3, which they did.
Yep.
Because they rally in game 4. Even if you lose game 5 in the way they lost game 5 and you're going back to Florida down 3-2, you're still very much in that series.
Yep.
Like one game changes everything. It's crazy. I mean, playoffs are crazy. It's hard to win. We have to acknowledge that. I mean, we're long into this podcast.
Yes, and it's small sample size, but they're always on the wrong end of the small sample size.
Right. I mean, I actually like analytics, so this isn't. Don't take this the wrong way, but
everybody here likes analytics. I'm tired of having to prerequisite every conversation with fucking. I love. No, it's not your fault. I hate this.
No,
every time we have this conversation, I go, you know what? I'm a big analytics believer. Fuck, man. Have you been listening to the show for a decade? We've always been big analytics believers, but it's okay to say maybe the numbers aren't the whole story. Is it not?
Yes. Yeah. Like you can't always put your hat on the expected goals.
Thank you. And thank you.
And I think expected goals, I actually find it a helpful measurement. It tells you who's getting the best chances from the best spots where you're most likely to score. It's actually just common sense.
And there are plenty of games. There are games, periods, and several game stretches throughout these playoffs where guys like Matthews and Marner and Nylander were Matthews, Marner, and sometimes Tavares were at the bottom of the expected goals chart.
And well, here's further context. Austin Matthews was about at the top from the Leafs end of expected goals and had lots of chances. I know for a fact that he was injured.
Okay.
And I know that they're still working out his treatment plan, and I don't think surgery is totally off the table for him. And so what that tells me is, okay, he's having expected goals that he's getting shots from spots that you would expect to score from, but there's other reasons why he didn't score. It's probably that he's not at 100%. Maybe his shot wasn't as dynamic as it would like to be, or maybe he wasn't moving in a way to be able to, all of the above. So like the number doesn't tell you everything. You can't just be like, he's unlucky.
No.
Yeah.
It's not just a luck-based stat. There is some luck in there in small samples. I get it.
And when you get those numbers put out on Twitter, people kind of just take it as a catch-all. Like, this is what happened, biblical, and this is the number, and this is the result, and how could that be? Look how good they were.
I think it's a very small they. But
yeah, but it's a loud they.
It's a very loud they. Yeah.
It's like the contrarians that come out and be like, "Wow, the Leafs lost 4-1 in that series," but I'll tell you, like they
sure should have won.
They should have won.
Yeah.
you can just.
I don't know if this is probably really melodramatic, but as a fan, like, it's gonna take a while for me to forgive them for Game 3. Like, that effort,
the effort wasn't there.
Everything felt on the line in that game. Coming off of Tampa, you're like, this is the series right here. This is our entire 7 years of this core is all in this Game 3, because you can't go down 3-0 because people don't come back from 3-0. And then that farting effort, it felt so demoralizing as a fan. Even though I felt like, hey, they could probably come back from 3-0. I'm still like crossed my fingers that it could happen. But as a fan watching that game, that was just heartbreaking.
I literally wrote an obit that night about their season.
And you were right.
Wow. Once every couple weeks, but yeah. But like, it was so obvious that they were dead then. Like, they called it a must-win game. They said all the things ahead of time. I think that will go down as this era's defining game. I really do. I think part of why we're sitting here under this cloud of like, what is going to happen next is because of how they lost to Florida.
Yeah.
They really believed in the front office. Like, they believed if they kept at it, if they added the right players, if they did the right things, that they were going to go on a long playoff run. And then they win in Tampa. They come back in 2 of the games. Yeah, they were maybe a bit lucky, but they were plucky. And they came back and they won 3 overtime games on the road. And they had it going on. And they drew Florida. Boston got beat out. The path is right there. All the things we talked about. I think they felt that internally. And then all of a sudden, bam, they're down 3-0. Their big players haven't scored in those 3 games. The team has produced like no offense. And Florida, and I say this with respect because Florida might win the Stanley Cup, but Florida is mopping the floor with them. Yep. And I think that caused...
It wasn't just that they lost. It was how they fucking lost.
Yes. It was an
domination.
Earthquake in the front office, I think. I think that was like, it shook everything, and they're still recovering from it. And I think that's
a huge thing that you're just saying.
So,
like, that's they're shell shocked at the moment.
If
yes, and because they didn't look at what day is it? That series started like 2 weeks ago.
No.
2 weeks ago, we're having this conversation. It's like, wow, they gutted out that win. They beat the Lightning out. Now the path is ahead of them. They have home ice advantage at them.
Yeah,
we should be doing our Game 7 recap, like you said.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, like 2 weeks ago, they were feeling good.
Yeah.
And then within about 6 days, the world was crashing down on them.
And you felt that as a fan, too, watching that game.
So if they lose the way you outlined a couple minutes ago, they lose Game 1, they hold on to the lead in Game 2, they go into Game 3, they have a stinker, and they're heading into Game 6, down 3-2, but still very much in the series. Are we having any of these conversations today?
Well, maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's quite as right?
Like,
they undid, let's call it credit, they won a playoff series. But they undid the goodwill immediately of winning that playoff series by losing in 5.
In a week.
And nearly being swept, frankly.
Yeah, in a week. They spent, like, that was, people sent me more congrats the night the Leafs made it through against Tampa than, like, when my son was born. than like when I got married. Like,
Well, you were working on that Leaf Series victory more than you were working on your son. So
he was asleep. He was asleep.
The son took all of 5 minutes.
Yeah. Like,
More
no, kids are really easy, Jesse. So
more
No, I
effort
mean,
went into
the
you
conception.
birthing that series victory.
Hey.
Sorry, SL.
Hey. Yeah, man. Like they spent it so friggin' fast. This fan base was euphoric.
Adam, can I play the Who's Coming Back game with CJ that you and Steve play?
Do it.
This is a good time?
Do it.
Okay.
This
Do
one's
it.
going to be so hard because I don't know who's choosing who's coming back.
That's
Man.
true.
You know what? You were right on a wild percent of them, and the ones that you were wrong on ended up being right later. Like Engvall, for example, you said going, he ended up going, albeit later.
I feel the pressure because I think I've had a good percentage on this.
Yeah.
This could be the year I go like 30%. Like I might have to go back a grade or whatever.
All right. So this will be opening day. Are they a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization? Ilya Samsonov, RFA.
He's here.
Matt Murray, $4.6 million for 1 more year.
He is not a Maple Leaf.
LTIR or gone?
He's not a Maple Leaf.
UFA, Eric Gustafson.
Not a Maple Leaf.
Wow.
$800,000 for 1 more year. Mark Giordano.
He's still here.
$1.1 million for 2 more years. Connor Timmins.
Still here.
Luke Shen, UFA.
Still here.
Lilligren, 1.4 for 1 more year.
Still here.
McCabe, $2 million for 2 years.
Still here.
UFA, Justin Hall.
He's no longer a Maple Leaf.
$5 million, 1 more year. TJ Brody.
Still here.
7.5, 5 more years. Morgan Riley.
Still here.
Zach Aston Reese, UFA.
He's gone.
Wow.
Wayne Simmons, UFA.
He's gone.
Nyes.
Still here.
Michael Bunting, UFA.
He's gone.
1.1, Sam Lafferty. 1 more year.
Still here.
UFA, Noel Achari.
Ooh. 50-50. Like, I think he's still here, but I'm not. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm so confident about all the rest, but
51-49?
can you, like, I don't know, someone made like graphics or emojis. Can I put like, I think, but like a little less confident?
Do we force CJ to make a decision?
You do a lukewarm.
Okay.
You do like a yellow light.
If I have to, I'm going to say still here, but I'm not, he's going to have options, but he wants to stay.
So like check mark, X, and line.
Somebody better be keeping track of these two.
Oh, someone will. All summer last year, every time something happened, it was coming up.
Hey, do you remember what you said? Do you remember?
This is going to bring me great anxiety for the next 4 months.
David Kampf, UFA.
He gone.
UFA, Ryan O'Reilly.
He gone.
2.1 for 3 more years. Callie Yarncroke.
He's here.
UFA, Alexander Kerfoot.
He's gone.
6.9 for 1 more year. William Nylander.
He's here.
10.9 for 2 more years. Mitchell Marner.
If I have to guess, he's gone.
Your phone buzzed the second he asked that question.
It wasn't about that though.
I know. I was just like,
11 million for 2 more years. John Tavares.
He's here.
11.6 for 1 more year. Austin Matthews.
He's here. There's a lot of roster spots, though, around, if what I say is true, there's a lot of players to be signed or traded for. Or
you going to ask about those guys?
Yeah, we could do the LTIR guys. We got Jake Muzzin.
I mean, his career's done,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I believe.
LTIR.
Nick,
So I don't know if they're going to put him on LTIR or maybe trade his deal somewhere, but I mean, he's not going to be on the lineup.
Nick Robertson, $800,000 for 1 more year.
Still here.
Bobby McMahon, $800,000 for 1 more year.
Still here and in the NHL.
Ooh.
Victor Mete is an RFA.
I have no opinion. I'm just not. I honestly, I would be guessing.
No read.
I assume he's gone, but maybe he stays around cheap and he's depth. I'm not sure.
All right.
And I want to ask about this player just because he's on the cap friendly page, and I think a lot of people want to know because they have no idea what's going on. What have you heard about Rodion Amirov?
I haven't heard anything recently, but he's got a very serious health issue, and I think we should be hoping for his quality of life more than him as a hockey player.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard anything recently, but he's got brain cancer. So My mom died from brain cancer. I've seen firsthand anyone who followed Gord Downie, the tragically hip. I mean, he's a young man, and I think that bodes well in terms of the kind of treatments they can give him versus someone a little older. And I know the last time I'd asked, and again, it's been months, he was still hoping for himself to keep the light on, to keep playing. But let's hope for his health more than anything related to hockey.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you mention Matt Murray in there?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Off the top.
And you say he's gone?
You said not a Maple Leaf, which I would file under the Marlies are not the Maple Leafs.
or is Robida Island not a Maple Leaf?
Wow.
Your term, by the way.
Growlers aren't the Maple Leafs.
Who's making, this is the hard part. I don't know who's making the call.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well,
But I think if it's like the current administration, they'll find a way to Peter Mrazek him.
Okay, question then. Kyle Dubas. Add that to the list.
I'm not doing that.
That's
Still a
mean.
Maple Leaf.
I'm already
Is he
ruining
Maple Leaf?
myself.
That's mean.
I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, honestly, I'm really conflicted on it
Okay.
because I don't know the nature of what he's dealing with at home, and so I feel like
And it's difficult to speculate with that.
I mean, look,
right?
it's unfair probably to all those players that I'm speculating all that stuff 3 days after the season, but with Kyle and what he said about his family, I honestly don't have any insight into what's going on there, and so like normally I would say MLC board seems to want him back. This is his team. I think there is a path forward, even though it's a frustrating end to another season. But the X factor is I'm not sure what's going on at home, and so I'm guessing on something that's probably pretty personal in nature for him.
Okay. Well, do you guys
Carlton the Bear.
Actually, forget that. Let's get rid of Hall & Oates goal song.
Yeah, let's go. Fuck that song.
I don't know. They've somehow stuck to that year after year after year.
I hope they keep Carlton.
Do you guys like it?
No.
Because
Nobody does.
No.
I thought it was cute for a little while, and then I'm like,
It's not cute when it's associated with all of your worst memories.
Yes.
Right?
Matt,
It's like,
Maxine at the end of the game, though.
na 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 na.
do you know what's frustrating?
What?
When somebody smashes your glasses.
Yeah, what?
No.
What?
That could be frustrating. Jesse almost smashed Steve's glasses pretty bad there. No, what's frustrating is knowing that a show or a movie has been released in another country and you may have friends in that country who are able to watch it, but you can't. That is frustrating.
Yeah.
NordVPN.
What do they do?
They allow you the ability to. With over 5,000 server options, no show is out of reach. You can use the link nordvpn.com/dangle and receive a huge discount on a 2-year plan. It's a 2-year plan plus 4 free months. It keeps your security encrypted. We all love to binge, but privacy is a big deal too. Threat protection. They've doubled down on keeping you safe with their new threat protection feature. It is risk-free, so you get your money back within 30 days if you don't like it. And definitely check out the link. It's nordvpn.com/dangle for that deal. And of course, obviously, never get locked out of anything.
Other countries have better shows than us. I'm just gonna say it. Like other streaming services, they got the good stuff.
They do got the good.
We're a show in this country.
When I was down in Mexico, like I don't know, it was like 3 years ago. I binged their TV on some of their stuff. It's
amazing.
so much better than Canadian streaming services.
And less expensive. NordVPN. Check it out. So
That was
with the
great.
Leafs, does anybody have any Leafs-related questions remaining for CJ?
Will the Leafs be the second team in Arizona? Bettman's going to move the Leafs to Arizona to save the franchise.
No. And as I've said repeatedly for everyone, Austin Matthews also is not going to go play there either
So on that,
because he might not have anywhere to play.
Tempe, residents of Tempe voted no on the new arena next to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Currently, it's a dump. So they chose
Like literally.
a dump that caught on fire last year over the new redevelopment plan. Now,
They chose not to give a bunch of taxpayer money to have that dump become something that isn't a dump.
so
Not in those words, Adam.
I don't know if it's a whole lot different.
No,
guys.
we've been against.
I'd rather it be a dump.
We've been against. Tax
I understand that, and let me explain where we're going with this.
Yes.
It's very funny.
Well, it's because of that. I'm in total agreement with you guys, and it's because of that you made the residents still choose a dump over an arena because of these couple stipulations that Xavier Gutierrez and his group asked for and needed as a part of this, as a part of the full redevelopment project. So on City of Tempe Proposition 301, 302, and 303, the votes were 56% no on 301, 56% said no on 302, and 57% said no on 303. And here's what they actually look like, because I got to tell you what each of these propositions were about. Sorry, not propositions. Here's what the phases would have looked like. Arena would have gone in 16,000 seats, 54,000 square feet of retail, 1,100 parking spaces, 1,500 square foot emergency response and public safety facility. The second phase would have been the practice facility and operations headquarters, 68,000 square foot outdoor event plaza, 50,000 square foot music venue, 200 room boutique hotel, 160,000 square feet of Class A office space, 80,000 square feet of retail, and 195 multifamily units. The third phase, 177,000 square feet of Class A office space, 300 room conference hotel, up to 600 units of multi-residential family, and 39,000 square feet of retail. And the fourth phase, the last one, 1,200 multifamily units, 143,000 square feet of retail. This would have included...
It's a lot of numbers.
I know. This would have included...
It looked like it was going to be beautiful. I will say that.
It did. Like, the renderings were amazing. The agreement for property tax quote relief for 30 years, which reportedly amounts to somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 million that does not get into the taxpayer money. Now, when they make these estimates, they are conservative about them. The idea that it would be $700 million to me is farcical. It's probably double.
Yeah, and that number actually went up because the original tax breaks projection was around 500 million, and then now they're saying it would be about 700 million.
You guys know how they do this. It's like let's minimize it, and then afterwards, once they sign a deal, fuck them.
Yeah, you know
it's the way 22-year-old CJ used to do his monthly budget.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to go out to the bar this month or have any fast food, or I'm going to keep it tight.
Yeah, and you were accidentally $200 million off.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Well,
And now I'm still digging my way out.
Yeah.
speaking of $200 million, Steve, the public would have had to put $200 million in infrastructure costs into this, because sometimes you get the developer to pay for it, but not in this case. They didn't want to. Infrastructure costs, including sewers and roads, power lines, things that the city would be bearing. The widening of the wealth gap also drew criticism, as some of the condos reportedly potentially had $1 million price tags. Now, in Toronto, that's not crazy. $1 million. It's still a fucking crazy number.
They have a lot of space in the desert, though.
That's right. When
Toronto, we don't have a lot of land, so things that it's supply and demand.
The average house price there would be like what, $325, $350, something like that. Not $1 million like it is here. Now, this is where it gets sort of interesting, and I want to run this news report for you. We're not going to run we can't run the video, but we can run the audio. And this is from a local news station in Arizona, News 12 Arizona. And this guy, in the first, I would say, 2 minutes of it, and that's all we need to hear, perfectly sums up the Arizonan perspective. Because I think we're coming at this from the side of, well, why don't they just simply do it? It's a fucking dump. It's like, just do it. But this guy kind of sums up a little bit more about where the Coyotes are. And then I want to talk to CJ about it, because I wanted to set that story up properly. There were so many details. It's really important that we get this.
Can we run the video or no?
I don't believe we can. I don't think they're going to call us on it, but let's just just listen to him, because he speaks very well about it.
All right.
Thanks. Now we turn to Team 12 political insider Bram Resnick. Bram, the results coming in about 2 hours ago. Reactions are still very fresh and in some cases raw. This was billed as the greatest deal in Arizona sports history. So what happened?
To put it simply, they didn't read the room right. They totally misread the room in Tempe. This is a different kind of election, an off-year election. You have a different kind of voter. The voter was older. These are folks who had voted in several elections before. So they knew the community, they were connected to the community, and the message sent by the Coyotes clearly didn't resonate. Also, you have to ask whether any community right now would approve any kind of tax that in any way might fund a sports team. Those are on the outs. They are not popular at all. And I know there's a lot of people upset about this. The message sent by the no side suggesting this was a subsidy. The Coyotes were going to get a tax subsidy. from the city. Clearly, the Coyotes were going to get a big chunk, hundreds of millions of dollars in future tax revenue to support the project. It just didn't go down well. It's just not the right audience for this kind of message.
Yeah, Bram. So obviously, like you said, not the result that the Coyotes wanted. So what are the steps ahead for the team and really also just for the city of Tempe?
City of Tempe, it's over. 4 mayors, the current mayor, the city council were repudiated in this election. They're not going to touch this again. The question for the Coyotes is you're playing in Mullet Arena, a college arena on the ASU campus that seats 5,000 people, was supposed to be a bridge to the new arena where everything was going to be just peachy. That's not happening. That's a bridge to nowhere. If I'm the Coyotes right now, if I'm Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, I'm getting on the phone to Matt Ishbia, the new owner of the Phoenix Suns, and saying, hey, can we play in your arena? Because the idea of 3 major league arenas in a community of this size was always never made any sense. The ideal matchup would be to have the Suns and the Coyotes back where they were.
Yeah, before.
Where the Coyotes, by the way, had a lot of success.
They
when
did.
Were playing
Problems with that arena, right, of some obstructed view seats. But I'd call Ishbia right now because he could probably get this team at a bargain, right, if he wanted.
Yeah.
The team that has no future.
So let's leave it at that. It's a situation that I think that we've never seen before. I always talk about this. One of the first topics we had when we started this show in the very first episode,
nearly 10 years ago,
almost 10 years ago to the day, literally 2 weeks shy of 10 years. We talked about when are the Coyotes going to get this situation sorted out. We're now a decade into this show. And you bring in a guy like Xavier Gutierrez, who is known for taking distressed real estate and turning it into profit and being able to flip it and revitalize. They could not get this thing passed. Clayton Keller posted a sad emoji. Craig Morgan said this is an existential question. CJ, you've been on this since the beginning.
Man.
What is your sense of things?
I got about 6 trips to Phoenix in a short period of time covering those bankruptcy trials. Was that in 2010?
Yeah, I think so.
I was at CBC.
Jim
A
Balsley.
long time ago.
Oh, man.
I was young.
Young CJ.
Well, unless that Matt Ishbia that is mentioned on the report there, like that's the Hail Mary. I don't. You can never call anything the final Hail Mary, but I think right now we're focused on where the Coyotes are moving and when.
Is that where we're at? Like Gary Bettman called it he had a profile published in the Sports Business Journal earlier this week, and Alan Walsh, who loves Gary, tweeted, he's like, hey, he was trying to have a victory lap before the vote because they all thought that this was going to succeed.
I'm okay with respect to Alan.
No, disagree with him. That's fine.
Well, there was optimism and hope this would get through. My sense all along was they knew it was going to be close. Turns out it really wasn't that close. It was pretty resounding no. But I don't think that they thought. I can't tell you exactly what their plan B, C, and D is, but they weren't like last night, like, holy shit. I think that they're thinking now, okay, now we got to go down the next roads. But I think that there's been preparations being made, including meetings with the owner of the Jazz. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Ryan Smith in Salt Lake City. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk over the years with Houston, consistent meetings with Quebec City, although I don't think Quebec's likely to get the team. But I think the NHL has other places that they could pivot to. And, we all know at this point, their priority would be to remain in Arizona. And I want to say this just from my mouth. I think Arizona could work with good ownership and the right building.
We've seen that it can.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and I'm not even saying they have bad ownership at this point in time, but they don't have a building. They need an owner who's willing to build that building if they can't convince the taxpayers
Sounds
there
bad.
too.
So, but the thing is that this was going to be the third sports arena in the area.
It's a huge area, though.
Yeah, but you gotta.
How many sports arenas are there in New York?
In Toronto, there's 2, and Toronto's bigger. I think you gotta have a couple of these teams split these places, don't you think?
So they were in American West Arena. I forget what American Airlines
in the 90s. Yeah,
yeah, they were there, and
it worked.
They had it was
great there.
$40 million in losses per year at one point because of the lease agreement that they were in, and that's what caused them to move out to Glendale and build that new arena there.
The problem that's where the problem started because they wanted to build in Scottsdale at that time,
And Scottsdale said no.
and Scottsdale, if I can tell you with certainty, if they built a nice arena in Scottsdale, every single NHL writer would tell you, like, you got to go watch your team play there. And every player, when he got to free agency, would want to live there and play there. Amazing spot in the world. Instead, Glendale came with a handout, built the arena it really is in the middle of nowhere. I've been there tons of times for games. It was a nice arena. It is a nice arena. Honestly, like if you just walk through the doors, you're like, wow, this is nice. Like there was nothing wrong with the arena.
It's barely used.
Except for where it was built.
Yeah,
that was the only problem. It didn't service the fan base. It was a nightmare to get to and from at the hours games would be played. Obviously, when you have the choice of sitting in traffic or maybe just watching a game on TV, eventually you start watching a game on TV instead of going. And it was distant. And, and quite frankly, the organization stopped paying their bills in Glendale. I'm pretty sure Glendale's not a big city either. Like the Arizona Cardinals play in the stadium right next door. They have the Super Bowl there and all that. But I'm pretty sure the taxpayers in Glendale, a relatively small city, are still paying for the arena. Like, I don't think that, so they bolt on them. And, I don't live in Maricopa County where this referendum was held in the last week or two, but they don't want to foot the bill for a new arena. And that's their prerogative. I just don't see another option at this point.
Yeah. And the
Mullet Arena only worked this year because there was this idea that they were going to build in Tempe, right? It's like we go through the short-term pain for the payoff. Well, now there's no payoff. I honestly, I don't see the Coyotes playing games in Arizona next year. I just don't.
Yeah, the HBS situation's interesting because he just bought the Phoenix Suns like 6 months ago.
Right.
That deal went through. So it's either they lease the arena from him and then they have to retrofit it to improve all of the sight lines because that was a huge problem during the 90s where there were so many areas in the arena where you couldn't see the hockey game.
Well, but my understanding is they just upgraded it for $500 million already.
Yeah. So
what are you going to put another 50, 100 million?
You're asking this guy who just spent billions of dollars on a basketball team and hundreds of $1 million on his arena to fit it for the basketball team to now spend more money and bring in this new tenant. It doesn't seem likely.
We do know that Robert Sarver was completely against the hockey team being there too. Like he was the biggest,
right? But he's not in the picture,
which is great, right? So maybe the other side of that is you go, well, if you want to do more.
Yeah. You're hoping, your fingers crossed, he buys the team from the
Well,
NHL.
I'm just going to say, is Xavier Gutierrez going to hang on to this team now? Like,
well, it's Alex Morello who owns the team.
Morello, sorry.
Xavier, works for them. I think he's team president.
So that's what I mean. Sorry, I always get them mixed up. I apologize.
The play for Morello, too, there was all kinds of plays, but, I think they were going to have a casino nearby that he would control at that spot. I don't know where he goes. Maybe he wants to be the one to move it. I don't think that's been his focus. I mean, quite clearly, they've worked a long time. Honestly, I met with these guys, time's a flat circle. At least a year and a half ago, they came through Toronto and I had a coffee with them and they showed me the plans for this arena district, like the whole thing. So this is before, like they've been at this for a long time. They wanted to be in Arizona. Like I should be clear on that. But now that it appears that they're at the end of the road with this project, and I don't think there's a lot of other places they can think about pivoting to. Maybe he looks at selling the team. I'm not sure the machinations that have to happen, but
I love when you use that word.
Well, because there's a lot of machinations. Like, I mean, this isn't as simple as, oh yeah, just move over here. But we did see, the Atlanta Thrashers, when they moved to Winnipeg, the announcement was made May 31st. So there is precedent to do it on a tight time frame. And it's going to be an interesting couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. So how long can they stay in everybody calls Mullet Arena a 5,000 seat arena. I was under the impression that after the upgrade, that they had to lower that to 3,200.
Yep.
I think 5,000 is what it used to be. 3,200, I think, is what it is for an NHL game now. How long can they play in that arena without knowing what the future is?
I have a hard time seeing how they play there next year unless. Look, maybe there's a deal.
Because it was supposed to be like 3 to 4 years.
Right. But maybe there's a deal worked out with the Suns owner in the short term here, and they're going to retrofit that arena. Maybe they can play there one more year while that happens. Like I guess that's possible. But how long can they play there without a plan that something better is on the other side? I don't think they can even go another year unless they have a plan that's tangible. I mean, it's such a, first of all, the players aren't happy. Like the NHLPA is not happy on behalf of the players that they represent. The other owners aren't happy because it's just a total suck on what
their profits
could be revenues. And I think, again, you stomach that pain if there's something great on the other side. Well, that's been, the idea of great on the other side has been taken away by this referendum vote. You know, keep in mind, the city council and mayor supported it 7-0 in November. Like if you were the Coyotes and you're working there, you're thinking that this is going to go in your favor. Now that the rug's been pulled out, it just, all signs to me point to relocation. Now,
my question is why. I want to know what made them think this would work, and why they had, and I mean this vote. What made them think this would work, and why they had such a difficult time motivating anybody to vote? Because I'm looking at the Maricopa County numbers that were shared last night. Less than a third of potential voters turned out for this thing.
Isn't that just normal in all votes nowadays?
Not like that. Like,
look at our elections.
Oh, the Ontario government was wildly bad, and even that was better than this.
Yeah, but this is like, they have these referendums all the time in Arizona.
Do they? Okay.
Oh yeah, like that's part of. Okay, if you ask a follow-up question, I'm not going to be able to answer it.
No.
But my general understanding of how it works there is that when there's big decisions from the city council, it's normal course that it's put to a referendum of the people, like far more than we're used to here.
Great.
So, but I'm guessing if you're always having these referendums about things you may or may not care about in your city, town, whatever, yeah, it's not a lot of people, but that was always the risk, right?
Yeah.
What are the actual numbers? Is it 30,000 people that voted?
The numbers are, so it's 29,153, and it's a 16,000 seat arena they were voting on.
But at the end of the day, you were down to the whims of 30,000 people. It's a pretty small number of people, relatively
but
speaking.
less than the amount of people it would have taken to fill the building voted yes for this thing.
And it was mostly, the young voters that they thought were going to show up didn't.
12, something like 12%. There was a tweet I saw from, it was from Bram Resnick, who we just saw, who voted. Tempe turnout by voters age 65 plus was 63% and made up 43% of all voters. That was one warning sign. Another 70% of ballots from voters in three Tempe elections. And I'm trying to find, I can't find the one that said youth voters were something around 12%. Like, that's abysmal.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, voting numbers in the whole world, like,
they're down.
We're at apathy levels everywhere on everything.
It's not great.
I mean, we could go in a real existential conversation here. We got nothing to do with the Coyotes.
The business. Can you bring in the edibles?
The whole business of pro sports is changing, though. I'll say that. And a lot of these owners, of course, I mean, you can get why if you're an owner, you would like the city / the taxpayers to take most of the risk on building you a building. And then you just extract as much capital out of the building as you can. It's a good setup. I just don't know how long that's going to work. I mean, look at the broader world. Like, nothing happens in a vacuum anymore. Like inflation is going crazy in the world.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the U.S.
And there's a lot of have and have not. There's a lot of wealth gap. There's a lot of, there's an entire generation of people in their 20s who were sold growing up that if you go to university, you have a well-paying job, you'll be able to buy a house. And they're now looking at savings plans that are 30 years long to be able to put down a down payment.
We had a guidance counselor
in the U.S. We've had banks fail
going to college.
Yeah,
banks have failed in the U.S. in the last 3 months. Look what's going to happen next. So the way these sports leagues are all built, all of them, is on this idea that every time there's a new rights deal for media rights or TV rights, that the price goes up. Right? That's the fundamental truth. That's how the NBA has grown, the NFL. Right? It's largely built on those media deals. But we're at a time where the media companies are not. They're not
profitable anymore.
They're not profitable.
And that's why people are getting cut.
They can't monetize the audience to the degree they used to. And here's the other problem. Technology is great for us, right? Technology is not inflationary. Technology is deflationary. The easier it gets to spread a message or to reproduce something, the cheaper it gets. The price of these TVs in this room are way cheaper than they would have been 20 years ago. Yeah. And by extension, the cost of consuming NHL games or NBA games, it should be going down. But the market forces are making it go up. And this is it's like two speeding trains going at each other right now. And that's pro sports. Like, I actually don't know what's going to happen big picture in pro sports. Seriously. because it's all built on this going up. Like, what's going to happen with the next Canadian rights deal in the NHL?
But we see other leagues
who knows?
figuring it out. The NFL just sold a single playoff game to streaming exclusive to Peacock. So NBC, who has the NBC network, said we're going to buy this just for our streaming network for Peacock, and it cost them $110 million for that one game. So
the NFL has a way bigger audience than the NHL.
But there are ways for these leagues to figure it out, and the NFL, with their giant audience, with the biggest TV audience in the world, is figuring it out.
Well, the NFL and the NBA in particular have a global audience.
Mm-hmm.
The NHL has not built that. I mean, there's obviously European countries, the World Hockey Championships going on right now, where people in Sweden, Finland, like truly love the game of hockey, and you can get a meaningful audience. But there hasn't been like the NHL is falling behind there. Because that's where this goes down to now. It's not just like, what's your Canadian audience? Like it should all be on a streaming service in some point in the near future, and it should be available worldwide. Anyway,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm on a tangent, but I worry big picture about the whole thing.
Yeah, and this comes back to the NHL for 30 years diminishing their product and not growing the game internationally.
Yeah, well, I mean,
here's the other.
When was the last best of best tournament? Like we need like dramatic change.
We need new leadership.
Well, or some true intent to be bigger than what they've been.
Would it be great if they were able to motivate young people to vote?
Well, okay. Speaking of which,
I'd love to know how many young people voted in the last provincial election.
The belief is the Coyote side spent less than $250,000 to activate the vote, opting to bootstrap the campaign. While the opposition spent over $2 million, backed by high-power labor unions who would not have received a guarantee that they would be the ones building the project. So, they spent an eighth of what the opposition did and expected to win. This is politics.
Well, and their internal polls, though, told them they would win. So this is an arrogant failure on every.
And we know now that polls don't work. We saw that with the Trump election. We know that those polls don't work. We know that's out the window. That
was in 2016.
Over. I know. That's why it's surprising.
We're always last on everything.
So let me ask you this, CJ. This is existential. They could have a deal worked out with the Phoenix Sun owner. It's Matashiba or Ishbia. They could have that worked out now. But if they do move, and again,
I can tell you they don't have that deal worked out. I think they want to have that conversation.
Okay, so they want to have that conversation, so we don't know.
But it's not done. Like it's actually up in the air right now. As of today, I know this on good authority from multiple people involved. The NHL is going to meet with Coyotes ownership any minute now, and they got to start working through what the alternate scenarios are. One of them is Ishbia. I think if it's relocation, the most likely is Salt Lake City.
Well, let me run you through. I
Toyota
want to get a 10 out of 10. Give me a score out of 10, a market score out of 10. Likelihood of these markets out of 10. These are the ones that have been thrown around recently. Houston.
4 out of 10.
Kansas City.
4 out of 10.
Quebec City.
2 out of 10.
Atlanta.
0 out of 10.
Whoa.
Atlanta needs to build a new rink, and I think they're going to be in line for a future expansion. But the whole thing is built around building a rink in a ritzy neighborhood outside of downtown.
And by the way, don't base your takes on Atlanta hockey on what happened with the Thrashers, because there's a whole heck of a lot more that happened with the Thrashers which are reasons why the Thrashers didn't work. Hockey can work in Atlanta. It just never got a great shot at it.
Well, I'm going to say the same thing. If they leave the Phoenix area,
it can still work there.
I'm going to say, like, under the right circumstances, it could be amazing.
Well, we saw that.
Imagine that Scottsdale arena.
Oh, it would have been.
Scottsdale's like the top 5 coolest places in North America.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like when that Scottsdale thing fell through, it was different leadership. Oh no, it was the exact same fucking guy. Sorry.
Okay. Next one. Southern Ontario, that New Hamilton arena that the Oakview Group is definitely not making for an NHL team. For sure not. They're just going to make it 20,000 seats, have an ice surface, and it'll be indoors.
For the Coyotes now, low, 0.
Okay. What's your off the board pick? Because I have one more city.
Well, I think it's probably going to Salt Lake City or something to do with the Suns. Honestly, I think.
So Salt Lake City, out of 10, what would you give it?
8.
Because the owner of the Jazz tweeted today.
Did he? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he tweeted today. Somebody tweeted out
At reporter Chris, I am buying the team.
Stanley Cup playoffs always delivers. Please bring this to Utah at Ryan Qualtrics, and Ryan Smith is his name. And he just tweeted back, and this was a month ago. He tweeted back, in motion.
The big rumors that came out this week.
He met with the NHL Board of Governors.
Yeah. Okay. Was that he met with them, and he was also talking about the Ottawa sale. So there's something there.
Yeah, the Ottawa's staying in Ottawa.
Yeah. Oh, of course. So
for now.
There are so many hockey fans there, man, and I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. This is not about fans.
No, it has nothing.
This actually isn't a fan issue. This is just like they never operated the business well.
No, they didn't. And that was the complaint all along. They didn't have an arena that was worth going to, and they didn't have a product worth seeing for a number of years as well. And you combine the two.
The irony is, look at their, I know draft picks. They got a lot of draft picks. They have a chance to actually build this thing into something right now.
You need a place for those players to play.
What happens if they end up building it in Salt Lake City? What a shame in a lot of ways.
Welcome to what it's like to be a Quebec hockey fan, I guess.
Right.
Quebec City.
Yeah, your team wins the cup the year they leave.
Shit. Should have kept them, I guess.
And then they've had a chance to go through another generation and then win another cup.
Yep.
So now they're like a Denver staple.
Yep.
And remember, there was a team in Colorado that failed too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Prior.
Yep.
So it's I think it's smart business for the league to be in Phoenix area.
Yep.
But they just have never found a way to get it done. And at a certain point, here we are. I think we're at that point, honestly.
I was surprised by the vote. I woke up. I went to bed early, and I woke up and I made the mistake.
I was tweeting from bed.
Yeah, I made the mistake of checking my phone, and I see reporter Chris, and I'm like, well, this is sure to be hot fire. And I actually kind of forgot the vote was happening, and holy shit.
It's a real shame for Coyotes fans, because if you've hung in this long, you are amongst the hardest of hardcore fans in the entire NHL.
In all the sports.
I don't know how you do it.
How on earth are you still here?
Leaf fans complain about it. Holy shit.
Should worship the ground you walk on.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say something that's unrelated, but I just twigged my mind?
Give it to us.
Go for it.
The fans in Florida were awesome in the second round.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like Sunrise, you mean?
Yeah. And I'd never been down there for a game where there was any real buzz. I've been there to lots of regular season games over the years, but it was awesome. And even the local media coverage, seriously, was busy. I remember I was in a Matthew Tkachuk scrum on one of the practice days in Florida, and it was hard to get a question in. You felt like it was like we were chasing down Gary Bettman during the lockout or something, and everyone's like, Mr. Commissioner. It was, I'm just saying, because that market gets pooped on, but their team's winning, and it was legit there. It was awesome.
The mathematical odds of what's happening in Florida right now are ridiculous.
With the Heat too, you mean?
The 2 8 seeds potentially going to the final. That's crazy. And we're 4 games away for each team. That's awesome. That's a great sports story. I just wish it didn't happen at the expense of my favorite team.
You wish the Leafs were playing Florida in the conference final right now. And
yeah, a little bit. And also Kyle Lowry's with the Heat. Good luck, Kyle. I'm very happy for you.
Did you see that there was one game at the end of the regular season, Florida, Carolina, and had Florida won, 3 of the playoff matchups would have been different anyway.
Yeah, I saw Chris.
Hey,
everything just performs on a razor's edge.
Yes,
Steve, what did you just bring up there?
The Heat?
Yeah.
Miami Heat?
Well, I wanted to know, you brought up something, and it triggered something in my memory, and then I just lost it immediately.
Both teams in Florida are the 8.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. There has been conversations yet again, despite Bettman saying a couple of months ago, I think it was at the GM meetings, that there would be no changes to the playoff format. Is there going to be?
I haven't seen any conversation.
Okay. Okay. So you haven't seen it.
I haven't heard any wind of anything changing, and I haven't really seen a lot of talk.
Now that the players are speaking out about it, the NHL feels no more compunction to change it up.
They're dying on this hill, bud.
Okay. Well, they died in Arizona last night.
Yes, but that was not related to the playoff format.
That's fair. But they've died on hills before and been wrong.
CJ, is your rating of 8 for Salt Lake City higher than your rating for them staying in Arizona somehow?
Yes.
Okay.
So you think it's more than likely that's what's going to happen?
Yes, but
and how quickly would that be announced? Because we know that.
Well, it has to happen quickly.
The Thrashers to Winnipeg one happened in like a couple days.
But it was May 31st they announced it. Today's May 17th.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's the exact playbook. I'm not saying it can't be announced June 3rd, which is the first day of the Stanley Cup final. But I do think it has to be worked out here, obviously, one way or another in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And they can play in the Jazz's arena that's outfitted for hockey?
As far as I know, yes, but don't take that to the bank.
Okay, and because they have a bid for the Olympics coming up as well, Salt Lake City.
Right, and they already had the O2 Olympics.
And they already had the O2 one.
Who won the gold medal there?
I don't know. Who did?
Gio Sakic.
So I
Gio Sakic.
There could be another
30 people in my parents' living room. It was amazing.
Oh, it's fucking awesome.
There could be another arena possibly that's just for hockey for this new team.
Maybe. I quite honestly, I went to bed last night and woke up and came here, and
I'm just speculating.
I haven't done all of my homework. I just know that they're very high on the Salt Lake City possibility in a pinch. So that suggests to me that they can at least make it work if they have to. I've never been to Salt Lake City.
Me neither.
We sent our basketball reporter. We sent him a couple weeks ago for the All-Star game in February. There wasn't much to do outside of the core where everything was going on for All-Star weekend.
He had lots of sodas.
Because it's dry state, right?
Sody pops. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I just Googled, are Coyotes native to Utah? Can you still call them the Coyotes in Salt Lake, right?
Well, they got the LA Lakers.
According to Google, they can live almost anywhere. They've adapted to a wide range of habitats, and coyotes can be found throughout the United States and quite common in Utah.
Yeah, they have the Jazz. They stole that from New Orleans, and they just moved the team. They didn't change the name.
I didn't know. Yeah, Utah's not known for its Jazz.
No, that's not their team.
But Kevin Weeks did just tweet out a picture of Salt Lake City.
He's trolling a bit, though. Didn't he have another picture last night? Was it Houston or something?
Something like that.
Surprised it wasn't messing around.
I just thought it
in Salt Lake City.
I mean, sorry. I'm sure Kevin's hearing similar things to me, but like I feel like he likes to stir it up on there.
Absolutely. Yep. So, CJ, what to you is the most interesting story in hockey right now that no one's talking about?
Oh my God.
STPN.
Who's going to play for the Stanley Cup? Maybe. It feels like.
Is that it?
I'm
talking about behind the scenes. Not that I see. I'm not of the opinion that the Florida, Carolina, Dallas, Vegas matchups are bad. I think that's actually really good because it's great for the Southern hockey markets and we want to see it grow. So I'm not hating on that at all. So that part of it I'm excited about. I think it's going to be a great Stanley Cup final after these East and West finals are done. Outside of necessarily what's going on the ice, is there anything that you're like, hey, keep an eye on? If it doesn't get you in trouble, you don't have to answer that.
No, it's not that. It's just I've been so deep in the playoffs and the Leafs and what's still being decided, right? Pittsburgh's looking for president and GM. I don't know how interesting that really is. I mean, big things ahead for that organization, but I think they're at the end of their road as a contender. A few places looking for head coach. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I'd love to give you just a tasty meatball to finish this thing off.
Why isn't I want your comment on this. Why isn't Calgary allowing Brad Treliving, who is at the end of his contract and decided not to come back? Why are they not allowing him to interview for jobs before July 1st?
Because contractually, they have the right to stand in his way.
So is Murray Edwards bitter?
It's hard to read anything else into it than that. I mean, he walked away, right?
Yeah, but he didn't
mutually parted ways.
But we know that he didn't choose Sutter as the coach. So what's he supposed to do? Stay there?
I mean, that whole thing is wild how that played out.
Mm-hmm. They let him.
They promoted someone beneath Brad Treliving to president in Don Maloney when he left. Left in large part because he didn't think he could work with the coach any longer. And then Don Maloney fired the coach.
I know.
Like it almost asks, like the sequence of events is almost ass backwards.
Almost.
It's almost like, and then they got this weird arena proposal.
You guys would love to read some of my chats.
Oh, I would sure to be. I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
I got a few different text strings with people who just constantly laugh at the way business gets done broadly by NHL teams. It's not just Calgary or Philadelphia or whatever.
I mean, Calgary's also a team that is banking on one political party to win an election so they can get a bunch of public funding to get their arena done.
After having a previous one fail.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because of themselves, by the way. They are the ones that failed that last deal.
It worked in Edmonton, right? Like it went on and on and on and on for years, and then eventually they got that arena built. And it's a beautiful arena in downtown Edmonton that, as far as I can tell, is not spurred on all this business around it.
Albertans are not the type that like their tax dollars going to frivolous shit like that. They don't.
None of us should be.
Well, none of us should be, but when I lived there, I noticed it. Like they don't even, a lot of times
they like not to be
fuck
taxed.
your public health care. Why do I have to pay for that? Like that's literally sometimes the mood out there. So I'm shocked that a far right party would even agree to this. That's how desperate they are to win this election.
But there's not a whole lot else going on in Calgary. Like the Flames are important. So it's the sword that's hanging above them, right? Like that's part of how this is.
Oh, baby.
In terms of the way...
The older I've gotten, the more I've understood this stuff. I'm like, this is kind of dirty.
In terms of the way the league is run and the perception of the NHL, what is it amongst non-NHL people? Do you have a good read on that? On just how the league is perceived by like other people in sports? Is it really, because Steve likes to yell that it's the worst run league in the world and it's a fake league.
Unserious, I think is what he calls it.
Unseriously.
It is
but
deeply unserious.
Do you have a perspective on that?
I don't. I mean, look, my whole life and career is in this league.
Yeah.
And so and I don't sit here and say everything they do is great. Like I'm not, but I'm maybe part of the problem, honestly. Like I'm almost too close.
No, you definitely are.
I'm too close to the picture to see sometimes. But I think everyone just looks at them as just kind of like the cute younger brother. Like I watched when I was in the States a fair bit the last month, covering the playoffs. Like they get like moderate treatment on some of these, like the ESPN shows. But like they're not covering it. It would be like if you asked me to speak about the National Lacrosse League. Like I'd be like, oh, there's this thing over here. I don't really know what that is. Like that's kind of how I think they're viewed.
That's how the ESPNs of the world, the FS1, that's how they kind of look at the NHL.
It doesn't seem like they take it seriously. Really.
It's not number 4. It's the big 3, and then everything's kind of below it.
What was it that Julian said about Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser and on Pardon the Interruption? They're like, well, we really haven't been paying attention, but here's our pick for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That's the rights holder.
To be fair, I haven't been paying attention to the NBA. Like I'm aware of what
100%
are winning. Like, but I don't.
Yeah, but they are a multi-sport show.
Whenever
right?
there's an NHL star that shows an interest in football or baseball or basketball, it's implied, kind of. Like, of course they like those things. But whenever someone from any of the other sports...
Yeah, like when Brooks Koepka was at the Panthers game in March. Like, I was like, whoa, what is this?
And every time someone who's an athlete in a different sport is at a hockey game or says that they like hockey, it's with an air of, isn't this silly? Isn't this silly that I'm here? Wow, JJ Watt knows how to skate. Isn't it wild that he knows how to skate? It's so niche that it's not even an option, and it's wacky to even go to a game.
Part of it is niche because it's a game played on ice, though.
That's true. It's
like I
hard
honestly,
to skate. I learned that the hard way.
As a kid, like I was exposed to basketball and soccer and sports that you basically just have a ball and then, of course, a net.
Yeah, and that's it.
And I think a lot of kids just don't get a chance to be exposed to hockey. Mm-hmm. This is actually the argument for having teams in Arizona and Florida and Carolina and everywhere.
Yes.
We want the best.
Yeah,
we want the best
circle.
athletes in all those places. At least some of them to put skates on and become Austin Matthews.
Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes. Weren't the Kachucks raised there?
Yeah, but they were raised by an NHL father. Like they could have been raised on Mars, and I'm just saying, and been exposed to the game, right? Like their dad played in the NHL.
And isn't Shane Doan's kid coming up through the ranks too?
Right, but his dad played in the NHL. So like,
Could have been.
I'm presuming Shane might have found his kid anywhere with skates.
Yep.
It's more random families, like Austin's family has this history of like athletic. They're big. His dad was a pitcher. His grandfather was a notable basketball player. Like he was going to play a sport and be really good at it. And probably lots of them. He's a good golfer now and all this other stuff. But you just want him not to be playing baseball. Like this is all of hockey existing like way beyond when we're around is predicated on young kids still playing the game and wanting to play the game and keeping the pipeline going.
$400 sticks.
Oh man. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
It felt like out of reach in the family I grew up. Like my parents, I played hockey, but I was never, first of all, I was never in danger of making the NHL. So I'm not
4 goals? Was it?
3 in 21 seconds.
3 in 21.
Well, I mean, at least I managed to do that. I made the Coburg Sports Hall of Fame.
Let's go.
Not nothing. That's definitely not nothing.
But Yeah, I was not threatening to. But like the point is it felt out of reach back then, and it's gotten even crazier. And if you live in Toronto, and I didn't live in Toronto, I mean, it's a factory, man. But we also need the kids from other places.
Yeah.
And that's why we need best on best hockey. We still need kids in like rural Finland and in places like Russia. And hopefully at some point, like Asian kids, like eventually coming and playing the sport, like, because they're coming to basketball, right?
Oh, yeah.
Basketball's insane though, because like a guy can pick up a basketball who's athletic at 16 and be like made into an NBA player. Like if you haven't skated by 16, it doesn't matter how great your athlete you are, you're never playing the NBA.
Yeah, Pascal Siakam famously didn't play basketball until he was a teenager.
Right.
And he was a first round pick.
So that's an extra challenge that hockey has, is you literally have to get kids at like 5 or 6. Like if you're not skating by 5 or 6, the odds, even doesn't matter what athletic gifts you have, the act of skating is so unusual. You have to develop muscles in a different way. You have to learn to do things while skating. Like it's, anyway, as Steve, you've shown us.
Yeah. No, I'm great now, though.
Are you?
No. I can pivot, though, and I'm really proud
That's, you know what's an accomplishment, man. It takes time.
Well, I'm not even making fun of you. The difference between you and I is I just got a chance to skate as a kid.
It took me like 5 years to be like, oh, okay, this is fun in a way where I'm not completely useless.
Right. I haven't played hockey like in a long time. I can skate, but I haven't like played in pads and with a stick and everything.
You'd fly around me. Maybe not Jesse.
I want to set up SDPN like hockey nights, like every Friday or something. We run out a rink and we all go and play somewhere in downtown. You know, it'd be good.
I would have told this on my own show, but I didn't tell it to you guys, so you might not have heard it. Around Christmas time, my family has always rented ice when we could. And like kids, like my dad goes out in his skates to like, you know, my brothers get kids, my sister has kids, you know, like it's a wide skate. And this year, my oldest niece now had a boyfriend, a nice young man who came out and was skating with us. And like we got in a bit of a pickup game. And I was trying to get around him, and I went to lift the puck a little bit, and I hit him dead in the ankle. Oh. And I was like, oh my God. Like, what did I do?
Welcome to the family, kid.
I know. And like,
You should give him the two-hand across the wrist.
he was polite and nice, but I'm sure he never wants to see me.
Hey,
It's exactly like.
But in my mind, I was like, oh, I'll just like lift the puck above his stick, and I caught him square in the ankle.
No, you got him though, like the pickup football game in Wedding Crashers. Coburg, hockey, and crab cakes. That's what we do.
So even like that competitiveness comes out when you get a chance.
Yeah.
CJ, Overdrive yesterday was talking about the Leafs loss versus the Oilers loss, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you got to go.
This is a long one.
Which one's worse?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got a text, and I completely lost my train of thought.
Leafs loss, Oilers loss. Which one's worse?
I don't know. They both lost.
Which one's worse for their organization?
That's definitely how both of them look at it.
Yeah, but I mean, like they both thought they were going to win the Stanley Cup or have a chance to, and they're done sooner than they thought. The Leafs loss is worse because they have bigger questions this offseason.
Okay.
And I think that there's going to be bigger change in Toronto than Edmonton. So I suppose that one's worse. But like, it's by degrees. Like at this point, honestly, it's get it done or don't.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up there. CJ's been gracious enough to give us 2 hours of his time. CJ, thank you so much. And you've got a brand new CJ show coming out tomorrow with Julian.
Oh, my God. I got to do it again?
Just keep fucking podcasting, man.
Congrats. No one was hired or fired while you were here.
Yeah.
Woo! I did just get a text that invalidated some of what I said on the show, but I'm not going to. We'll just.
Woo. Uh-oh. Shit happens.
The Steve Dangle Podcast.
Powered by Sports Interaction. Want to bet?
Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.